Hey meow. That's right on weekdays. It's not hey now, it's hey meow. I beat the system, Adam.
Meow.
Hey meow. So let's do a little update here. Obviously, yesterday we watched the thrilling Constantine, Brianna Greyjoy Twitter battle. So there
Right.
has been an update. Okay, there's been an official update from Constantine mostly today. So
So that
let's.
means it is official, right? If it's one of the participants in the drama and they actually make a statement, it's an official update.
That's true. That's true. So Constantine today has been laying hard into DEI Barbie, also known as Brianna Joy Gray. And
Mm-hmm.
I think either he got a bunch of negative comments yesterday or something because a lot of people, she went off calling him a big racist, and I think probably all night he got comments calling him racist. So now
Yeah,
he's
look,
responding to a lot of that stuff.
people got a big old racist stick out and they're like bonking Constantine on the head with it
I
24
know.
hours now.
So sad.
He's got a huge welt on his head that reads DEI.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's some starting from chronological order. Back, from last night, he said, "I have zero time, respect, or mercy for cry bullies. That isn't ever going to change.
Oof.
Not going to change."
Art. That's a good response.
Yes.
I like that one.
And then, okay, so then after that, he retweeted Melissa Chen saying he's not anti-black, he's anti-you. Know the difference? The Brianna Greyjoy. I like that.
Oh yeah,
Not
look,
anti-black, he's anti-you. That's pretty good.
that's yeah, I say that a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you can't some people are just uncriticizable because of they're just too high on the oppression stack.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically aristocracy. This is why I always say the aristocracy, the oppressed, right? You're literally you're calling out the king here.
Right. And I wonder because he was watching part of our stream, and I wonder if he watched more of it because we had said, like, what exactly did he mean when he said DI Barbie? And so he gave a tweet answering that question.
Right.
So there you go.
Nice.
He said DEI is when you give people who aren't qualified opportunities they don't deserve and then silence anyone who notices.
Right. Which
So
made
like
me
so
think, wow, he's really saying that Brianna Greyjoy is unworthy of her
yes.
position, her station, her status
Mm-hmm.
in life.
Yes.
He's
He's a
just
big dum
going.
dum.
He's not pulling his punches here.
No, he came for the scalp. He said, "You put moderator in quotes, and then you
How
call
dare
me a
you?
lying Jew slash Zionist.
Yeah,
I'm coming for
exactly.
you."
Yeah, there was a time when I thought she might have earned that station. Now I'm
Hey.
completely retracting that intuition. Yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
have you
Then he
heard?
says,
Oh, go ahead.
by the way, I'll be hosting a lot more debates and doing it in a way I think is superior to the way many are currently done. At the moment, most debates involve two sides screaming at each other and arguing endlessly while the moderator simply observes. I believe a better way of doing it is where the moderator who holds the respect of both sides is able to check the robustness of the argument made by both sides from a neutral position. This is something two widely opposing debaters are not able to do. Balance is not achieved in this format by the moderator staying out of it, but rather by offering valid and useful questioning of both sides in a balanced way. Naturally, some people will think this is not the right way to host debates, and doing things in this way risk drawing criticisms from the partisan supporters of both sides. But where I believe the real value is, and that's what I'm going to do. A couple of examples we've done already, and then he listed the liberalism versus conservatism debate, which I don't believe I've seen. That
With
looks interesting.
Stephen Hicks, that's a great debate. That's a fucking awesome debate.
Yeah,
I
because
believe
it's
it's them.
it's
Yeah,
Stephen Hicks versus James Orr.
Yeah, that's an
So
excellent debate. Yes, I'm
I assume Stephen
100%
Hicks is
behind.
taking the liberalism position.
Yes, and
Yeah,
Stephen Hicks completely annihilates the conservative position. Just
nice.
destroys it, nukes it from orbit.
Right. And
Complete
to
and
and
utter destruction.
mhm. And to be clear, Stephen Hicks is he's an objectivist, right? He's an Ayn Rand guy.
Yeah. Well, he's a
So,
liberal though. He believes in individual freedom. Obviously,
well, obviously, if he's an
libertarians,
Ayn
yeah.
Randian, he's a big libertarian. So,
Yeah.
but Yeah, so yeah, when it's libertarian versus conservatism, it's not liberal versus conservative. It's liberalism, like Democrat and Republican versus conservatism, which the guy was he? Do you remember what he was
I
arguing for?
really can't believe you haven't seen that debate. Bring
I
it up
haven't,
right
no.
now. Let's watch it. That debate is amazing because he forces him really. I mean, I'm making a big show of it here, but Stephen Hicks obviously respects the conservative position. It's a completely respectful debate.
Mhm.
And I mean, I even think a lot of conservatives kind of are towing the line for the liberal position, even though, that name, the word liberal has kind of been tainted in modern era. But a lot of conservatives are individualists. So that is a liberal position. The liberal philosophy is about individualism. So
Right. What I was just trying to point out, because there's confusion, especially in America, how we have this conversation, is that when it's liberalism versus conservatism, that doesn't mean Democrat versus Republican. Because Stephen
no.
Hicks is probably a lot more on the Republican side of the voting block. So the
Well, yeah,
conservative position is the anti-democratic, anti-living, I guess, anti-living in democracy generally position. So, or
people
anti-individualist
would
position.
people would call him people would call Stephen Hicks a conservative, especially now since he's
In
completely
America, yes.
anti-woke.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Stephen Hicks is not a conservative. He's closer to an American
He's a libertarian.
libertarian. Yeah.
Yeah. He's more like libertarian. Right.
Yes. But look, the conservative guy, I mean, I watched it a couple times, but it's been a long time since I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of comes out against the Enlightenment and, is basically, skeptical of science and stuff like that. So he's like,
Hmm.
and both of them are super knowledgeable about history, which makes the debate even more interesting because Stephen Hicks like kind of goes through the Enlightenment tradition and spells out how liberalism is kind of based in a skepticism of traditional traditional institutions and traditional ideas. Yeah, that's where it
Mm-hmm.
kind of gains
So
its
it's kind of
power
like,
from.
when we have these conversations with Carl about, liberalism, it's sort of like in that vein,
Bring
essentially.
it up. Let's watch like a few minutes of it. It's a great
Okay. We
debate.
can watch a few minutes of it.
It's awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
Let me get into the watch together.
We'll just watch the intro. We can watch the rest of it maybe later in the week if people want us to come back to it.
I'm curious. I'll check it out.
The liberal aim to try and achieve civic peace is a good aim. I would challenge
Okay, we can skip past. Oh, maybe this is good. Maybe it's a good recap.
you, particularly given the last few weekends we've seen since October the 7th, to say that we have civic peace.
But my response to that from within the liberal tent is to say that liberalism needs to be muscular. So what we then have to say is the healthy form of conservatism, the healthy form of liberalism, we face a common enemy.
Sometimes, in order to preserve
Who's that common enemy?
The socialists.
these anti-individualist, authoritarian mofos.
and conserve, change is necessary. And that's the big challenge that conservatism faces, just as the liberal faces the challenge, when do you stop liberating and start becoming a conservative?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first of what will be many debates here on trigonometry. I'll be hosting some, Francis will be hosting others. I cannot tell you how delighted I am to be joined by two of our favorite ever guests on the show, Dr. James Orr and Professor Stephen Hicks. Welcome both.
Thanks.
We're going to have a debate about conservatism versus liberalism. You've both written a couple of pieces for my Substack, and there'll be more coming. I want, Stephen, you had to go second in the written debate, so I'll go to you first. One of the, I thought, more persuasive criticisms of liberalism, and we heard it, a lot of it at ARC, where we all were a few days ago, was that limits are liberating, and the pursuit of unending freedom is actually destructive to society. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think you have to start with a moral conception of what society is. We start with individuals who are both the agents. Individuals have agency. You don't see them as pawns pushed around by forces beyond their control. So there is a conception of human nature at work. And that's a philosophical starting point, not only of agents, but of moral worth. That whatever we're doing in society, that we're forming various kinds of social institutions, businesses, religions, families, governments, and so forth, it is with respect to the value of the individuals involved. So we come together to do business as individuals. We form families. It's two individuals who come together, making a voluntary choice, and they then bring into the world another individual, right, that needs to develop his capacities for agency and moral self-responsibility. So it's not that freedom and individualism is corrosive of the social. It's rather that the social exists to preserve the individuals and enable individuals better by division of labor being coordinated, achieve the values of the individual. When those social institutions are no longer serving that function, they should properly be dissolved, and and new ones created. And this is partly why we're going to have an evolving and, in some case, revolving society. So
this perfectly embodies my split, where it's like collectivism is very simple, individualism is very simple. Collectivism is when the needs of the group supersede the needs of any individual in that group. And individualism is when the needs of the individual obviously supersede the needs of any group. Like, and he's saying we should take that as far as like if the group starts becoming oppressive of the individual, we should dissolve that group. Right?
Right.
So very, very simple. I love that distinction because it's just so black and white.
So it is making clear what your ultimate moral standard is. Some social institutions should be dissolved, but that requires that you've made clear what your moral standard is, and you should have no problem with some social institutions going by the by, and you should be actively preserving other social institutions because they've proved their worth at protecting the rights and values of the individuals involved. So
but I suppose what people mean is when we look at the real world out there right now is the dissolution of certain institutions has led to increasing atomization of people feeling disconnected from each other, from society. And that's why I think a lot of people are now starting to talk about
but then I would say it's not freedom that is causing the atomism, right, that people are worrying about. So then we have to get to say, what do we mean by an atomized individual or an isolated individual or an individual who has come to be in an adversarial relationship to what we think of as a healthy social institution? And I think when you drill down and start looking at cases, it's not going to be too much freedom that's the problem.
What is the problem?
Well, it depends on when you drill down which kind of atomism you are worried about. So if you wanted to say, for example, you have individuals on social media who are feeling isolated from the world, and it's teenagers who are considering suicide. Now, you might then say, well, we shouldn't have given these powerful liberating devices to them in the first place because they don't know how to do it. But I think what's actually happening in that particular subcase is you've got young people who are trying to develop a self, and they are going into, in most cases, what are echo chambers. And then instead of developing a self, what they're doing is just echoing and reflecting what's going on there. And you have a certain amount of mob action with respect to those individuals. The mob action is not anything that is respectful of the individual. So you have a social environment, right, which is not conducive to healthy development of individuals. Instead, you've got a kind of, I would say, collective mob psychology that's destructive that's going on there. So you do end up with isolated individuals, but it's not too much freedom. It's mob psychology.
Very interesting. And James, I want to put some...
Okay. I mean, we'll watch the rest of it. I don't want to watch the whole thing right now.
What's your take? I like the way he
yeah.
turns the woke into anti-individualism, even though obviously a lot of them will say, look, we are progressives, we're for the rights of the individual. But he's like, yeah, but there's a mob psychology taking place here that just is people turning their brains off and going groupthink.
Yes. I mean, and that's definitely, like, when we talk about wokeness or cancel culture, it is definitely the behavioral aspect, even when like getting to the ideology. The behavioral aspect is 100% the mob, right? The
Yes.
pitchfork wielding, angry mob that wants to tear and burn something down. And that's obviously, just by its nature, an anti-individualist movement at that point. So,
Sure.
sure. Well, very interesting. Okay,
Cool.
cool.
I'll probably watch it again later today.
And then the other debate that Constantine brings up as an example is the Destiny versus Gorka debate, Sebastian Gorka debate.
Which I have not seen. I don't know if you've watched it yet.
I have seen, yes.
Okay.
It's weird. Well, I mean, first of all, I kind of like agree, and I like the idea of. Or actually, I haven't seen the whole thing. I saw like half of it, I think. And I like the idea of Constantine saying that he wants to be kind of like a more active moderator as opposed to just letting people like fight it out. It's a very difficult thing to do, and I definitely applaud attempting to accomplish that. The part of the Gorka debate I saw, it didn't seem like I don't remember him really interjecting that much at all. No, he interjected a little bit, I guess, but I felt like, and I don't know if we'll cover like a piece of it, because the only thing that I really thought that was interesting about the Destiny versus Gorka debate that I saw was that Gorka like literally doesn't answer anything. He doesn't say anything. It's kind of wild. Destiny's kind of doing his internet debate sort of style where he's like trying to make arguments and say like, here's the base of my arguments, blah, 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 blah. And whether you agree with him or not, that's fine. But at least he's like kind of presenting something. And Gorka's just doing nothing but like the stereotype of a politician who just like throws out like platitudes and like empty sort of personal stories and anecdotes. And it's like he's not actually making any sort of like tangible argument. And
sounds like I'm gonna hate this debate.
I mean, it's really like obnoxious to listen to. And I mean, Gorka comes off, in my opinion, comes off like awful, 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 awful. But it's interesting because obviously, if you're someone who's more on the right, or someone who likes Gorka, or someone who doesn't like Destiny, I would imagine that Gorka's strategy of just kind of appealing to your intuitions, because that's all he does. All he does is appeal to intuitions that people who are already like in that intuitional space are obviously going to be like, oh, Gorka killed it. Gorka did great, right? Destiny sucks. He's a cuck. So that's kind of that's why Gorka's kind of using the strategy that he's using is to appeal to that sensibility already. Because it's a very intentional strategy. It's not just like an accident.
Right. Yeah, look, that's I do like, I admire from a philosophical and intellectual position what Constantine is setting out to do here, because I mean, a lot of debates are just people talking past one another, and evidently I think he's trying to get them to understand one another's perspective, which is kind of a trick in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the entertainment value in these debates is the fact that people kind of don't understand each other. I mean, we've had a bunch of leftists on, and it's comedy gold because like they really don't understand anything we're saying. And
Yes,
but we
right.
understand them, so we have like a asymmetrical advantage over them. We understand our position and their position, and they really don't even understand their own position. Which, that's it. That's the entertainment value. So I don't know that this got a lot of views or was very entertaining. I love this debate. Like I said, I've already watched it multiple times. I'll probably listen to it again today while I'm doing something, while I'm working on the comic. So, yeah. I don't know. This is a reoccurring theme, I think, in our lives as content creators. Like, we know what is going to get clicks and grow a channel, and at the same time, we kind of don't want to do that because it does seem manipulative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, are you reading Twitter Sucks DM or Super Chat?
I wasn't, but I can now.
Well, what are you doing?
I was reading the chat.
Oh, okay. Twitter Sucks for $5. Oh, go ahead.
Cameraman 502 for $5 says, can we get Bernie Sanders to apologize for the damage he has done to the nation by forcing Brianna Joy crayons?
Probably not, but he should.
He
definitely.
should. He 100% should, yeah.
Yeah.
Twitter Sucks for $5. Thank you so much. Says, can I hop on for a bit at the end of the stream? There's something I want to discuss from yesterday's stream about properties rights. Sure.
I have like, we can only go for a couple hours, but I'm down. Definitely.
Yeah.
I love arguing about property rights. So
Mr. Uberquas, thanks so much. The unofficial Stitch I'm lawyer for the 20 gift memberships. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, that's very generous.
There
Nice.
you go. Zerg1337 Leet, thank you so much for the 10 Aussie bucks, says, Sitch wasn't impressed with your social engineering about race in a society. Some cultures relate to aesthetics, and forcing or encouraging the flattening of those standards is disturbing.
Well, that must have been our argument about the demographic stuff, right?
Yes. Yes, I guess. I'm not sure I quite understand what Zerg is saying, but social engineering about race in society. Some cultures relate to aesthetics and forcing or encouraging the flattening. What does that mean? Some cultures relate to aesthetics? I mean, I
Well,
agree
this
forcing and encouraging the flattening of those standards is, well, it depends what you mean by encouraging. I mean, obviously, we shouldn't be flattening standards. We should be encouraging people to like live up to a set of standards. So I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to say here, but
well, this is well, we were talking a little bit about different demographics and different vocations reflecting the general demographics of society.
right.
And I look, a lot of people make the argument that there's some sort of biological component to what people are interested in. I think that does exist between men and women. I don't think it exists between races. I don't think it's a biological component. I think it's a cultural component. So certain things could be more interesting to certain cultures just because, you know, it's like some cultural meme that's spreading through the culture. So the whole idea that you can get, you know, the number of plumbers to reflect the demographics of the actual nation just seems ludicrous to me because of this effect, this cultural effect.
Okay.
Look, we've disagreed.
I don't necessarily. I don't know. I actually don't necessarily disagree with that. But
Okay.
I whatever. I don't really want to have the conversation.
Yeah,
again,
let's not
but
do it again. But
yeah,
yeah.
but so I don't disagree with what you just said just there. But Mystery Dinosaurs for 25 PLN says, guys, I mentioned you the China show. The ball's in your court. Don't make me look bad. Don't mess this up. We responded to this yesterday. Maybe you didn't see, but
Yeah.
so Adam, you know, we've sent messages to them, so I guess we'll see.
You are not the first.
Yes, but thank you.
To try this trick. And
Right.
yeah, thanks for doing it. I love the guys on the China show, even though I only know Winston's name. I don't know the other guy's name. But look, I like watched Winston's content, I think, for like a couple weeks straight. Winston is a great content creator and all his videos are highly recommend. He has, the thing that I like about Winston is like he has a good moral core. Like he's about doing the right thing, even if it's costly to him personally or socially. And he's got a number of videos that illustrate this perfectly. And you know, I dig that. I dig that. I like, this is why Jordan Peterson became huge. Someone that's willing to, you know, take some slings and arrows for their principles it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So I would love to talk to Winston. I'd love to give him on the show. We'll see if it happens.
I guess I'll just say one thing about the whole the racial demographics conversation we were having yesterday. We just said just now, because I think maybe I didn't make myself clear yesterday, or maybe you missed what I was kind of saying, which is that what I said was we would expect in the post-racial, like Star Trek utopian society where there's some sort of like more universal culture, that the numbers on average would be the same, right? So maybe you're missing out on like when I was saying the universal culture is what like is kind of the key element here.
My response to that would be America is a collection of smaller cultures.
No, but wait, hold on. Wait, just 1 second. Okay. So the point is, and I guess what I was trying to get at is, like, let's just like hypothetically imagine, okay, like we have multiple layers of how people get jobs, right? And so, or how society would be kind of structured. And so we'll start with sort of at the bottom, we'll have our fantasy Star Trek post-racial society where there's a magical unifying uniculture that's pretty broad and generalized that, you know, the entire planet basically operates under, right? That's like the baseline. You say, okay, from that baseline, you'd expect it to be like relatively similar demographics, at least among different ethnic groups, assuming that there's a shared like magical culture along most jobs, right? But then we say, okay, well, let's start like piling on like more realistic scenarios, right? So we say, okay, on top of that, we'll pile on like, okay, well, maybe we live in a society where, no one's really racist, but there still are different cultural attitudes that exist for all the different, not just ethnicities, but different different areas of the country, right? Different little pockets of the countries, different cities. There's going to be different cultures that exist all over the world. And then you say, okay, well, now we're going to have some level of change because then, or what you said just today, which I agree with, is there are going to be different cultural attitudes about, what jobs people should go after, what type of education people should go after. And that's kind of, I think that's why you're seeing like, see a high level of Asians, going into specific job markets, a high level of Jews going into specific job markets is, because of the cultural attitudes based around these jobs. So that's going to affect things. So you're not going to have like a perfect ratio. And then you pile on top of that, you say, okay, well, there's some level of systemic racism, or rather, I like the way Ben Shapiro talks about it, like the echoes of past racism that have basically influenced things. So you have, well, because of past racism, it's more likely that Black people are going to be lower socioeconomic class. And so that's going to cause like a plethora of issues where you're going to have, because of the past racism creating a present day economic reality, that's going to create a situation where, it's going to be less likely that there are Black people in higher levels of degrees, less likely to be in specific jobs and high level jobs and things of that nature. Right. And then on top of that, the final level at the top layer would be like, well, the person who looks at your resume is just racist and says, I don't want to hire, someone of, who's not white. Right. So these is kind of like the various layers of thing. And I think we've, for the most part, completely eliminated that first layer of just like direct racism of the guy looking at your, or girl looking at your resume and making a racial determination. And we're still kind of in the section where there's like the past racisms have kind of created a bunch of situations in which, have disadvantaged, minorities and Black people specifically in America. And I think the problem is that when we were watching the video yesterday, a lot of people, including the woman who was talking, they're still kind of like operating that we're on this top level racism where the person just looking at your resume is like, well, I'm racist on some level, so I'm not going to hire a Black person. And that's kind of where the disconnect when you have these conversations about DEI forms, is that they're just operating from a different worldview, thinking different behaviors are really prevalent when, you and I don't think that's what's going on.
Right. But I think they would dismiss all the underlying levels that you're admitting exist. They think there's just the one level where the person is racist against the individual, and if the number of plumbers doesn't perfectly mirror the racial makeup of the population, then there's some racism going on somewhere.
Well, I think it's weird. Like when I've noticed having these conversations, and she was kind of doing in the conversation we're watching, they'll kind of like, even if they acknowledge the echoes of the past racism affecting the present argument, people just intuitively jump back to the direct racism. It's very difficult for people to hold the concept of past echoes of racism or systemic racism in their mind. They want to like intuitively just jump to the direct racism because it's easier for people to just kind of wrap their brain around and visualize. Mm-hmm. And so people keep jumping to that in these conversations. They keep jumping back and forth. So, and then there's also the conversation. It was like, okay, well, even if you get an acknowledgement that it's not like direct racism, it's the past echoes of racism. They say, okay, well, what do you do about that? And that's why I agree with what the guy was saying in the video yesterday, where he's talking about like, well, Coleman Hughes's example is you can't really like force the change from a top down. You have to change it from a bottom up perspective. That's the only way to really actually solve the problem. If you try to force it from a top down, you're not really fixing anything. You're just shoving people into positions that maybe they're not necessarily suited for and causing, more racial tensions.
My point in talking about this is challenging their evidence, because they're literally using the fact that there are disparities as evidence of racism.
Yes.
When I think even if all the racism was gone, you would still have disparities for all these other reasons, right? So that's why I'm kind of pointing at those. And look, and you kind of contested that you were like, out over enough time, it would kind of, this equilibrium would be reached, which I fundamentally disagree with, because culture is constantly changing. I just see culture as like this churning, moving thing. It's like, the ocean just churning and churning and churning. And the idea that any one time you're going to have like a smooth ocean is just laughable to me. Like you're constantly going to have different populations with different
I don't
interests.
disagree with that. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is like, so going back to that kind of 4-layered example I was talking about,
Right.
like if we remove, so we remove the first layer of like direct racism, right?
Right.
And say like we theoretically are able to actually to remove completely the second layer, this like echoes of past racism affecting the present day. So now the
Right.
only thing that you have is just there are different cultural elements that are just influencing things, right? It's not like
Right.
no one's necessarily disadvantaged, just things are just different, right? I
Sure.
agree with you. Things will never be like perfect, but one imagines they'd be significantly closer to the proportion than they are today. I assume
See,
you
I
agree
don't-
with that.
I don't even know. I don't know about that
Okay.
because I don't know
I don't know about that. I don't know how you come to that conclusion.
well, so it's different subcultures adopt different interests, and those interests can affect those subcultures and then affect the overall vocational makeup by demographic.
Yeah, but people generally want to be, and cultures generally want to be successful. And that's why we see, the various subcultures that seem to emphasize like getting education, getting a good job. You see them tend to gravitate, not 100%, but you see a lot of overlap in terms of like what jobs are being gravitated towards, doctor, lawyer,
Right.
programmer, things of these natures, because people are looking, the culture is based around ideas of like, okay, what is going to make you successful in society? Right.
Can cultures have a different status levels for different vocations? So can one culture say attorney is high status and another culture say attorney is low status? Plumber is high status.
I don't think so. Not in the level, not in the way that you're describing. I don't think that would manifest. I can't think of an example of that manifesting.
Okay.
So there are or actually let me reframe that. So like when we talk about CRT and stuff, there are examples of how actually like if you go and you get a job as a lawyer and you're not like fighting for, you're not
Civil
using your
rights.
lawyering skills to fight
Yeah.
for civil rights for some kind of race reason.
You're
then
a corporate lawyer.
You're just some normal corporate lawyer. Then you're like a race trader, right? So that is a low status position. But my thought process on that is that the only reason those cultural attitudes exist is a kind of those are like a sour grapes attitude that is embedded within the echoes of past racism. So I guess when I'm saying we're like in the hypothetical, we're removing the layer of past racism, we're getting rid of ideas like that. I don't think those ideas would exist anymore if we were able to get rid of the past echoes of racism.
Yeah.
And so you still might have a situation where like, yeah, there's going to be more, I don't know, black basketball players or whatever, or black musicians, because there's some cultural attitudes based around that. But I think you're still going to see significantly more, black doctors, black lawyers, black programmers, things of that nature, because those are just jobs of, those are just high status jobs that people seek after.
Right. Yeah. There's just so many other factors that I can think of. Like just say you've got just a popular, well, look, let's not dwell on this. I'm not fully accepting the metric, this equilibrium idea that you're putting forward. I don't know what evidence you'd look for to show that there's some kind of equilibrium that's going to be reached. I think the random churning of culture is constantly going to keep those.
I don't, because people generally seek high status positions and successful positions if it's a positive, if the culture is focused on pushing things in a positive direction.
People also look for positions that are not necessarily high status, but are high earning positions like plumber and nurse. And there's all kinds of positions that, make excellent money, construction worker. So they seek those positions to make money, not necessarily for status.
But doctors make more than plumbers and nurses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think, like, when you go to a hospital and you look around and you see that like 90% of the doctors are white, and you see that, 75% of the nurses are black or Hispanic. Okay. I don't think that's because there's a cultural attitude about like, well, for status and money reasons, you should only go reach the level of nurse instead of doctor. I don't think that's what's happening in that situation.
Right.
So
You think it's
I don't think it's racist. I think
lingering racism?
I think it's just, I think it's the echoes of past racism have put families in economic positions and cultural positions where it's either viewed that reaching the level of doctor is out of reach for people.
Right.
So, and maybe is in terms of going to medical school and things of that nature.
Yeah. Look, I should have been a doctor. I'm white. What was I thinking?
There you go.
I wasn't interested in being a doctor. But anyway, like, we can move on.
Yeah. Zerg for $20. Thank you. Says, sure, if you base your ideology on a TV show. And then the second one was, but can it okay even if culture is diverse into their own speciality? Ain't that the whole point of multiculturalism? Sorry if I came across passive aggressive. Well, you did come off super passive aggressive. Obviously, Zerg.
Where's Zerg at?
Because
okay.
like, I'm not basing my ideology off of a TV show. I'm using it to exemplify some concepts. I'm not basing my ideology off of it. So, but first of all, I don't believe in multiculturalism. I think multiculturalism is a toxic ideology that will only bring ruin to a society. So,
Well, America is a very interesting culture. Like, most cultures are not as accepting of these lower level subcultures, right? Like a super conservative culture, the kids all might decide to go goth, and the super conservative culture is like, no, fuck you, you're not going goth, right? That's not going to exist. Boom, they stamp out that subculture, right? But America kind of thrives on these subcultures. Oh, this subculture is going to turn into another subculture, right? And another subculture. So I think that is a product of America being super individualistic, super respectful of the individual, super tolerant of these different cultural, attitudes. As long as it's, live and let live is kind of the central ethos of American culture. So,
yeah, but see so part of what I think makes America work, I agree with you, is there has to always be some level of assimilation, and then there's some level of like, yeah, you can maintain a freedom to like retain your own cultural attitudes, but I think overall there has to be a high level of assimilation.
Right.
And the reason I take umbrage with the word multiculturalism is because the word multiculturalism is anti-assimilation as an ideology. It's saying
I agree with you. Yeah.
Right. It's saying that you're going to come into a culture and you're going to have your own culture. You're not going to assimilate and you're just going to exist next to the other person. And I don't think that's possible. I think that's a ridiculous pipe dream.
The culture is basically the super culture is America, fuck yeah. And all these other subcultures
and
are
live and let
them.
live. Right.
Right. If you don't have that live and let live as a meme of the basic culture, then you get these subcultures, which are like, fundamental Islam, right?
Exactly.
And they're like, live and let live, fuck you, right?
Right.
So they basically have turned their back on the America super culture, the culture, the overarching culture. But the reason why they can do that, and why, America does have to be vigilant of assimilation and looking to nations where they don't have this philosophy. They're like a very conservative culture, very like anti-individual. These people have a tough time assimilating because they don't want to accept that live and let live attitude. They don't want to look at other cultures. Those other cultures offend their moral sensibilities, their moral intuitions. So yeah, I completely agree with you about assimilation.
Right.
But the American culture is very interesting and much more accepting of other cultures. As long, like, you can bring your culture here as long as you accept the live and let live America super culture. Fuck yeah, right?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good way to talk about it. I don't know if there's a word for it where you have a large cultural attitude like that, like maybe 50% of like, quote, the culture is this America, fuck yeah, live and let live, work hard, you can succeed sort of attitude. And then there's other like subcultures that break down underneath that larger cultural idea.
Well,
Right.
luckily, most people want to come here because they adopt that culture where they are and they get pounded down. They're like,
Right.
no. So they're
Yeah.
like,
Right.
they're like fundamentally American at heart. They were born American. They just got to get here,
There you go.
which I think that's a beautiful thing. We're poaching all of the most motivated people from all over the world just by maintaining this ethos. And that's one of the things that is scary about multiculturalism is they're like, oh, we don't have like they don't even examine what I just talked about the superculture. Like that offends
No.
their sensibilities. They're like, what? One superculture that's above all the other cultures? Isn't that racist? It's like,
Right.
no, it's
And
not,
yeah.
dumbass.
And that's what was in, when I was talking to Joe and that corn guy, where they were both like taking this highly cultural relativist position where they didn't want to even say in a conversation publicly that some cultural values are superior to other cultural values. And they get super like, oh, you can't say some cultures are superior to others. That's racist. And you're like, what are you talking about?
I
Would you
know.
rather live in America or, a country that practices fundamental Islam? Like, what do you mean cultures are not superior? So,
Yeah, as soon as they're living some monomaniacal culture, they're like, oh, that sucks.
right. Okay. The real Hulk for $5 says just had dinner with my partner's upper middle class parents. They don't think racial attitudes have shifted since the 80s. Yeah, I think a lot of people. Well, it's interesting. It would be fascinating if you could somehow like. I don't know if they would be able to answer this question honestly. Not because they're intentionally being dishonest, but just because they've like forgotten. I think pre wokeness, a lot of people on the left generally, if you ask the question, do you think racial attitudes are better now than they were in 1980? I think overwhelmingly there would be an agreement there. And I think now, after wokeness and after Trump, because of sort of the propaganda, a lot of people on the left are like, no, things are exactly the same. Nothing's changed. So,
Right.
Grendel Vat for $5. Thank you so much. Says to take Adam's analogy a step further, I would say smooth brains can only conceive of a smooth.
Oh, shit.
There you go. I like him. Lord of the Nerds for $5 says, hi, in a hierarchy of evil with surprise sex and murder at the top and jaywalking at the bottom, where do you put racism like using the N-word? I don't know. Where on the hierarchy of like evil actions, where is racism? Like using the N-word?
Well, I mean, it's
I don't know.
above
That'd be hard.
jaywalking.
It's obviously above jaywalking,
but it's
right?
super below murder and surprise
Yeah.
sex, like obviously. Look, I often think about this because a lot of people, the problem is they would put racism above like rape. And it's like,
Well,
how do you interface with that person?
It's interesting because I think a lot of people, like I would put calling someone the N-word as like below, obviously it's below any kind of property crime, right? Like stealing is
of
worse than
course.
calling someone the N-word. But I think a lot of people on the left especially would say that calling someone the N-word is worse than stealing from them.
Right.
So,
how do you even have a conversation with that person?
I mean, you
Like
can, but you could try to probe them like, well, what do you mean? They'd be like, well, it's, psychological damage. I'm like, okay, like, someone's going to have like a post-traumatic stress disorder because you got called the N-word once by like a random person. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, they're living in
So,
just a fantasy world. It's
right,
like,
right.
would you want to lose a job opportunity over racism or be raped? It's like, oh my God, look, I'll find another job. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Yeah. The Real Hulk for $10 says, what if a group of people had a culture where they would rather take the 1 in 19,000 shot of being an athlete rather than being a doctor or lawyer? I saw someone claiming that's how inner cities are. No, that is how inner cities are currently. Completely. Yeah. That's what's going on. That is completely what's going on with certain cultural attitudes in this country. So,
yeah, people who are more financially unstable take risky financial bets.
right.
I mean, Seems obvious that's what's going on
Right.
there.
But I think those cultural attitudes nothing exists in a vacuum. Those cultural attitudes develop and exist and have been developed because of the history of racism that is, that the Black community has gone through in this country, has kind of produced those cultural elements. So,
but there's just as many white people that do that. Like, look, they moved to Hollywood to become film stars, like, by the boatloads. How's that any different?
there isn't. Well, first of all, we kind of get into trouble when we kind of say like all white people or all Black people are in a monolithic cultural attitude, which is not true. But if we're kind of just generalizing to have the conversation, by ratio, by per capita, it seems like there's a lot more white people that are seeking success through less risky strategies, like just going to school to get a degree, as opposed to trying to do the 1 in 20,000 shot of being an athlete or a movie star or something of that nature.
Right.
Per capita. So
yeah,
because obviously, there's like a lot more white people than Black people. So obviously, just raw numbers, a lot more white people going out to Hollywood and doing things like that. So
man, I hope the ChatGPT evolves to the point where we can just get rough numbers on anything we want to ask it, because all these conversations are super fascinating, but we always run into the, like, how do we verify that claim? Like, I immediately want to know, what is the population of Black Americans that are taking these paths versus white Americans, just for out of interest level.
Hey, Counterpoints. Counterpoint says, I do buy Warhammer because of my culture. That is correct, Sitch. There you go. There you go. That's your white trash culture calling Counterpoints.
I think we're
Just
way
kidding.
overselling college degrees right now and kind of screwing people
Well, we
over
might be
by,
now, right? But that's because of now we have the elite overproduction problem. So
yeah.
JMac. Oh wait, I skipped one. Zerg for another 10. Aussie Buck says, I don't think Black athletes are beating white or Asian athletes because of racism. And yes, Adam, this is social engineering. We will change society so all outcomes are evil. I think.
Well, I'm against that, just so you know.
I'm going to be real, Zerg. I have literally no clue what conversation you're responding to because I don't even know what you're talking about. Neither me or Adam are talking about enforcing social engineering to have equal outcomes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm against affirmative action. I'm against the DEI quotas. I don't like, if you run a business and you want to hire certain demographics, go for it. Right.
Right.
But where I have problems is when people want to hire certain demographics and they let the meritocracy angle slide because they want a certain population and they don't have enough qualified applicants to fill those roles. So look, if you have just a plethora of qualified applicants and you can mix and match and make whatever United colors of Benetton you want, like, go for it. I don't care.
JMac, our circuit file for $20. Thanks so much. Says what's deemed high status has changed all throughout history and is even varied throughout present day depending on that culture. That is definitely true.
Yes. Yeah, of course. True.
But it seems like certain cultures that view success in a specific way, they always, even though what is deemed high status changes, those cultures are able to to basically aim their children at whatever the change is throughout history. Right. There's always going to be a lag time because obviously it takes people time to figure this out. But so that's why the most successful cultures seem to be more about just what is successful in society, aim your child in that direction.
Well, I think high status people are more status conscious about where their children are.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy or cycle or something. Yeah, sure.
But low status people, they have kids too. And they're like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want. You got to make you got to make money. You got to get a job, but whatever makes you happy.
Right.
They're not like, you got to compete in the status hierarchy.
No, obviously we're just using these words to kind of explain the underlying mechanics of what's going on. But parents don't say you need to get a high status job. That's not the way people talk to each other. So
no, of course not.
Right.
But look, if your dad's an attorney or a doctor, he's like, I understand that path. I can mentor you towards that path, right?
Right. Yes, obviously. Though then you can kind of get this. Well, you kind of get a weird. Maybe this is like the third generation problem because then you get the issue of like people who have higher status jobs who have a cultural attitude of like, oh, well, let your child follow their dreams, right? And that's how you get like all these people going these gender study fucking bullshit,
Right.
as opposed to getting like a useful job. So it can actually backfire where you could have people of like who parents are more have a more quote lower status job or more like whipping their kids like you got to be like something you got to get like a really like important degree to make a bunch of money.
Are you saying gender studies professor is not an important role in our society? Says it sounds like you.
100,000%. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Good. I agree.
Zurich for another $5 says, "Sorry guys, I live in a country controlled basically by that corn guy, as you said." Yeah, I've heard Australia's pretty woke. So unfortunately.
Yeah. Look, and no hate here. We love the conversation. So push back.
JMac for $10. Thank you so much. Says, I don't know, Stitch. I have it on good authority that you were saying some weird things, bro.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Was that in yesterday's live stream?
I
heard
guess
some
so.
of that weird stuff.
You heard some of that weird stuff, yeah. MA566 for $5 says, quote, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty. You can excuse racism? Britta frantically shakes her head no. Thank you, Emma.
Oh, of course.
A good,
That's
good
community reference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like,
Lord
what?
of the Nerds.
Racism? Lord of the Nerds is back. I hope that's the original Lord of the Nerds. What's up, man?
Yeah, I wonder. Probably, because spells are the same. Lord of the Nerds for $5 says, to be clear, you're both saying cultural supremacy is a good thing. Aren't you arguing for some sort of liberal cultural utopia?
Yes.
Yes.
1,000%. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we are cultural supremacists.
100%. Yeah.
Why do you think we're the last superpower? Because our culture fucking rocks.
True. 100%.
Yeah.
Genie Anchor Payment for $5 says, I think family stability has more to do with outcomes than any group history. If the foundation is bad, the building won't last. I mean, I agree, sort of. Like, that's one of those, like, you need to have it to succeed on average. Not everyone, obviously, but on average, you need to have it to succeed. But you can still have it and fail because there could be, like, the broader culture could still push people in, bad directions, like being part of a Mongolian horde or something, right? All the good family structures are going to help you if the society is rooted around, raping and pillaging. So, but I agree, it's definitely an important aspect.
Mongolians were very progressive.
Oh, really?
A lot of people don't get this, but yeah. Genghis Khan was super progressive. Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. I've literally read a book on Genghis Khan. You'd be surprised.
Okay.
How much he was for quashing hierarchies and meritocracy and letting women do what they do best.
Mm-hmm. As long as you, submitted to the horde and paid them, right? Very progressive.
I mean, I think they had progressive taxation.
Wow, very progressive. I guess that's why he raped so many people, that his DNA is the most prolific in the entire world.
I mean, maybe he was a ladies' man. Maybe they were flocking to him.
Okay. Zurich for another 20 Aussie bucks. Thank you, Zurich. Says, as our offsprings will hate us for eating flesh when the protein paste and become vegan in the future and judge us the same or worse than racist, will you, Adam, as a follower of Christianity, forgive racists?
Forgive racists? I mean, if they reform their ways, sure.
There you go.
But I mean, I really don't. I don't like racism. I think racism is linked to low IQ, and so I do think. I mean, there are obviously exceptions. There are some very smart racists, but I think mostly,
right?
Yeah, I think mostly, a lot of people are racist because they're dumb.
But that's a good example of sort of like the shifting cultural attitudes, because obviously you go back in time, you look at a lot of the founding fathers, very intelligent people, very moral people, and yet still like super racist, because the cultural attitude of racism was so dominant and domineering, for that time period.
I'm not I'm not sure the founding fathers were as much, because there's all these accounts of how they, like Benjamin Franklin wanted to end slavery, and I think was it Hamilton that married one of his, or had a relationship with one of
No,
his
you're thinking Thomas
slaves, or
Jefferson.
oh, Jefferson, yeah.
But and actually, I read a whole article about how maybe that's not true, and it's kind of
Oh,
been like
okay.
this
So
myth that's been perpetuated. But
okay. Well, if it's not true, it's not true.
Yeah, I think Hamilton was pretty anti-racism. I don't know if Franklin was, maybe, but they were like less racist than most people at the time, but they were still like, you know, had slaves, right? It's still pretty fucked up. It's like, oh yeah, I'm less racist than other people, but I'm pretty sure you could dig up quotes of some of the founding fathers talking about how like black people are not, people. So
They understood the limitations of their time, but they,
right. But that's why I agree. It's important to understand things in the historical context, that just not say, well, because they were racist, we have to write off everything they've ever done. So to acknowledge that's the flaw of humanity and the flaw of human culture and these cultural attitudes. So okay.
I think I have a live stream here. I haven't watched in forever. Mongolian morality, evil or based? Because I read portions of this book, and it's surprising how much overlap there is with progressives and Mongolian, with Genghis Khan, basically.
Right. Zerg for another $2 says the vegans say the same thing. I think that is going to be the future. There will be a future where we will figure out how to eat some kind of meat substitute that tastes better and is probably better for us. And once that's a thing, people are going to talk about how like immoral it was, not just to eat meat, but to do factory farming. And let's be real, factory farming is disgustingly immoral and horrific. And we just do it because it's cheap and, efficient, but it is horrifyingly like disgusting. So 100%, when once we figure out, it's very easy for people, like once they figure out a better way to do something, that like, oh, well, now we can be moral about the situation, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's a great point.
So yeah, that will 100% happen with veganism in the future. Lord of the Nerds for $5 says, is it more nuanced to talk on how aspects of culture have positives and negatives? Do you fear engaging with authoritarianism as cultural supremacists? No, I mean, I don't really fear it. Obviously, to be clear, I agree, all cultures do have positive and negative aspects. I don't think any one culture has all the answers, at least so far. But we can definitely talk about, I think you can definitely average out cultures and say, okay, like, what's a better culture? The American, liberal democracy versus the, I don't know, living in the, Congo doing brown.
I look, and I don't
I think
know
we can
how,
figure out, which one's better, superior culture. So
I don't know how you could listen to what we just said. I mean, aside from basically just trying to paint us as authoritarians, like we just said that the main culture of America is live and let live, which is kind of the opposite of authoritarianism, right? So, and I admit there are other cultures in the world that are far more authoritarian, right? You want to talk about Syria, you want to talk about Iran, like, so if we go in and we say, look, we don't like this authoritarian culture, we're going to uproot it, and we're going to force these people to adopt our more free culture. How are we the authoritarians? Like, we're literally taking the authoritarians out of power. You think all that culture wants to be subjugated by those few people at the top that are like letting their moral sensibilities dictate how the entire society functions? You think that's a situation where most people are happy? No.
Right. Well, I think I agree with what you're saying, like on an ideological level. On a practical level, I don't think you can, obviously, this was like the war in Iraq situation, war in Afghanistan. I don't think you can force a culture onto a group of people if they don't want it, even if it's a more, quote, free, or better culture.
No,
People have to want it to live by it.
Look, I agree. And once the culture tips, like this is a distinction between Iraq and Ukraine. Like we looked at them both on the democracy index, right? Ukraine is like a 5. You have many people in the culture that are struggling to get the authoritarians out of power. Like if America can come in and be the cavalry and say, fuck yeah, let's get these authoritarians out of power, and you guys can develop your own culture. I just like, why wouldn't we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Lord of the Nerds for $2 says Adam is doing this with the Mongolians. LOL. And then I don't know. And then Zerg for $7 says forgive them, Adam. And then after that says live and let live by your standards, like every empire. Yeah. So again, there's like this weird thing that happens sometimes where people take like a piece of what you're saying and then they kind of run crazy with it and universalize it and ignore sort of like every unsaid thing that is, talked about, every unsaid thing that one should take for granted. Like, for
Right.
example, obviously, and we can go back to what Lord of the Nerds said, which is true, cultures have positive and negatives. And so, like, it is true in a lot of empires, there was a broad idea of culturally live and let live as long as you paid the emperor, right? As long as you paid your taxes, as long as you didn't rebel, right? The Romans kind of had that attitude to some extent, and a lot of their provinces they controlled. So obviously, the live and let live part is a good idea, but obviously you have to abide under an emperor that you have no control over, and you have no way to vote, and you have no way to choose the representatives that represent you legally. Obviously, that's all a negative part of the cultural attitude, right?
A
So,
contradictory portion of the attitude as well.
right. I would have assumed, now, I guess it would go without saying, and I would assume that people would have a good faith charity to understand that if we're talking about like American cultural attitudes, obviously living in a democracy where you vote for your elected representatives is a cultural meme, a part of the American culture. I would have assumed that without having to say that, but perhaps that's not the case.
There are a lot of people who can't handle the live and let live culture because they themselves are authoritarians. They have a certain moral outlook on the world. They have a certain moral aesthetic, and they want to see that moral aesthetic everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So they want conformity. They
Right.
thirst for it. They feel afraid if they don't have conformity. So I get that we are at odds with one another culturally, but I just look, I guess move to Iran or Iraq or Saudi Arabia, one of these places that's like a monoculture. Move there, and you'll be safe until America comes and liberates those people. Right? Look,
Right.
make it work for you for now. I just the whole world. I believe, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am incorrect about this, but I believe there are more people. There are more people that want to be free to engage in their own projects and goals and life options than there are people who are afraid of that. Who are really just, they want to be told what to do, and they want to live in a monoculture where everything looks the same, and they can sleep at night.
Right.
What do you think, Sitch?
I agree with everything you said.
Are there more scared? What is it? Maybe it's like 50-50. Maybe this is a constant tension of the world. There are the freedom lovers and the no, keep your head down.
I don't think it's 50-50.
Put on your uniform.
I think 75 to 80% of the population wants to force conformity.
But
And
their
there's
personal conformity and all of those
their personal
people have,
conformity, right?
yeah, and they all have conflicting conformities.
Right. And I think only 20-25% of people naturally have a kind of live and let live libertarian attitude about things. And that's part of what makes the American attitude both successful and rare and unusual. And it's only by the fact that it is successful and shown to be successful that other countries basically adopted it.
Yeah, reluctantly adopted.
Reluctantly, because there is always a bias towards success and efficiency in a competitive system because people have to compete to keep up. So,
right. Yeah. Okay, well that's good. At least they're forced to adopt it voluntarily, so they
Right.
can't say we're forcing it on them, right?
Well, I don't think you can. I mean, I agree. I don't think you can force them on. I don't think you can force these. I mean, maybe you could, but it would be so probably barbaric that the liberal society wouldn't really be in favor of the required actions to enforce a liberal culture onto a society that doesn't necessarily want it.
Right.
And it
This
would
is
take,
why.
generations to basically like sink in.
This
So,
is why Iraq has to be a no and Ukraine has to be a yes, because
mhm.
you can't, people have to want it, and America can play the cavalry,
Right,
but we can't go in and change the culture. The culture has
right.
to evolve to a certain spot. And this is why they keep the democracy index, because cultures, ebb and flow. They flow
Mhm.
from individualism to authoritarianism.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of these things they require bottom up change, which is why it's difficult and why a lot of the far left's ideas don't work, or even the far right's ideas don't work, is because they all kind of look at these systems as like elites forcing their will upon everyone else, and that's how societal changes occur. And I don't think that works for these very broad things. So
It goes back and forth. I mean, you can do some top down stuff,
yeah, some
and
stuff, but not these
yeah,
like really broad cultural changes that they're talking about.
right. Yeah.
So you can kind of tweak a little, little narrow things that capacity.
The bottom can rebel.
Lord of the Rings for $10 says, if one society has a culture of valuing nature and leisure and one has a stressful industry, what is the measure by which one has supremacy over the other? Well, I would say that, obviously you want some kind of balance between those two things. I don't think you can put each one of these things on like one end of the spectrum and say which one's superior. Because obviously there's going to be, elements of one thing that are going to be good. You need some kind of mixture of both, obviously, in your society. Otherwise, you're either going to have people who do nothing and don't progress and die out from famine or disease, or you're going to have one society where everyone's working super hard and quote progressing technologically, but everyone's, is miserable. So you don't want either of those situations. You have to find the golden mean.
I would say longevity is the measure. What is the measure by which one has supremacy over the other? The ability to thrive over time. I think obviously the more, and it's played out this way. The technologically
Mm-hmm.
advanced society is going to overtake the leisure, nature loving society. One's going to become a superpower. One is going to become, I don't know, an island nation.
Observer for $2 says it all turns down to might makes right. Sure, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Well, some people disagree with that, but I disagree with
Right.
it. Gene Penguin for $5 says live and let live is not a natural state of being, so it'll always require it to be strong enough to sustain itself. Nature's might makes right. 100%. Yeah, completely.
Well, it's weird because this might makes right is true as a force of nature, right? But
Mhm.
we as a society, I mean, the whole idea that we are giving the monopoly of force to the state is to do away with the moral prescription that might makes right. We, like the weakest person, has rights in our society because if people don't respect their rights, someone's going to come and incarcerate them, throw them in jail, right? So ultimately might does make right. But it's interesting that the first thing that we do once we establish that is carve out a way that we can get around that culturally, right?
Well, I think part of what's important about modern society and modern ideas about how to live is the understanding that just because something is necessarily exists in nature doesn't mean you want your society structured around that idea so one to one. Because
Right.
yes, obviously on a like if you're talking about like living out in the woods somewhere, might makes right is a law of nature, but that doesn't mean that your society has to be structured around that law. And our society obviously isn't structured around that law, even if at the end of the day, that's still an underlying principle in terms of like the might of our police and military is what, makes right our philosophy, even if our philosophy itself is not rooted in might makes right, which it's
Yeah.
not.
You
So,
said it better than me. Perfect.
right. Stella for $5 says, do you think Ukraine should be willing to give up land for peace, or should they fight to the bitter end? I think they should give up land for peace.
Yeah,
Definitely. I mean,
I
obviously it
agree.
depends on like how much, what land, but I don't think, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to just do a clean 100% victory. So they're going to have to give up something.
Yeah, and it would be nice if they. It's a weird situation dealing with the people that you were living in Ukraine, now you're living in Russia.
Right.
So some sort of concessions I think should be made to let those people become citizens of Russia or citizens of Ukraine, whichever they prefer.
Right. Yeah, they would presumably say like, okay, if you whatever, like say they give the Donbass region or something, say
Right.
if you want to not be a citizen in Russia, you can still move and move to Ukraine or something.
Yeah, sell your house to Russians and move.
Right. So for $10 says, I recently watched Tony Blair's speech to Congress, and he said that if you say they don't want democracy and freedom in the Middle East, then you're saying the women there want to be subjugated. Well, they do. I don't know what to tell you. He's right. They do. I mean, he's wrong, but he's right. They do. People have to make the decision to want to be free. Now, obviously, there's some women that don't want to be subjugated. But you need, again, I think you do need to have some broad consensus in the population about, if you want to quote reform cultural attitudes, you need to have some broad consensus in the population that's in favor of that. Otherwise, the amount of violence required to quote force, liberal freedom democracy onto a population is kind of antithetical to what we think of as liberal free democracy. I think the amount of violence to force that on the population would require. So,
well, this is what's great about democracy, and the people think of democracy incorrectly. They think of democracy as like this horde of people is picking the policy prescriptions. When I think of it as just, it's a feedback system to let society change directions if too many people are at a point where they're suffering. I was listening to this video the other day where this guy was talking about, and he seemed completely out of it. Like he seems like a rich person who doesn't really understand how people are suffering from inflation and high interest rates and all these bad things in the economy. And I kept thinking, this is what elections are for. Like we're literally going to tally up the number of people who think this fucking sucks and we need to do something different. And the people who are like, look, I'm doing just fine. Right.
Right.
So if the number of people who are suffering from inflation tips into, that 51% range, they're going to throw Biden out of office and they're going to elect Trump if that's their only option. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works. You got to think of elections as that measuring stick for how things are going. And look, I read a bunch of stuff on this because I'm interested in the financial stuff, but trying to get a bead on how many people are really suffering in this inflation situation and how many people are just fine because they have plenty of money is tough, very tough. You get different perspectives from different places and everyone seems to be just talking their own political intuitions, right? The election is where reality fucking hits that, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have an election, how are you going to do it, Sitch? How are you going to do it without elections?
Yeah, you can't. It's like,
you don't know.
The free market system. That's how you're supposed to derive information.
But the free, like there are tons of market failures that happen all the time. I don't necessarily know that, like the free market is not perfect.
No, I know, but I'm saying broadly, it's like the best way we have so far to figure out information. We don't have a complicated enough way to figure all this stuff out.
Look, and I believe in the free market, but I also conceptualize democracy as a marketplace.
Yeah.
How is it not?
I'm saying, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So Zurich for $2 says some culture just want to chill. I mean, that's fine. If you want to do that, I guess. You can do whatever you want. You're not fuck with someone else. You can do whatever. Just chill. You're not going to be the superpower that controls the world like America, but if you don't want that, then be my guest.
Yeah, and a lot of cultures like to take over cultures that want to chill. Like talk to Ukraine about that.
That is the problem. So that's why you need to have America, world police, right?
Yeah, it's like the world is a harsh place. People want your lunch.
Mhm.
People want to drink your milkshake. Okay.
That's true. Noel John's Kitty for $2 says Adam involuntarily quotes the Prime Directive. There you go.
What is the prime? The prime directive is you can't interfere. Oh yeah, because I guess it kind of is.
Yeah.
They have to want us to help. But in Star Trek, don't they constantly have people come to them and like, help us, please?
Yeah. Well, they have theirs is even more. It's, it's if it's a pre-warp speed society, they really don't want to involve themselves really at all. So even if they ask for help. So
Yeah,
I guess it is-
exactly.
You're right. Bunch of problems that come out of that.
All right, we have to get through super chat so we can at least talk a little bit
About
Donald
Trump's trial.
Trump.
I know. Options for $5 says, I think you guys said it better when you said might makes reality rather than might makes right. Well, if we said that, that's a pretty genius thing to say. So I do like that. Might
Yeah.
makes reality, not because that is what people mean when they say might makes right. Might makes what is actually happening, not necessarily like right morally. So
Of course.
because if you say it might makes right morally, that's just kind of a nihilistic approach to things, which I think is stupid. Majin for $5 says, not everyone wants freedom and they'll forfeit your freedom for their own comfort. Some couch it in fancy words, others just shrug and don't care.
yeah,
that is
I
true.
Totally
That is true.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Wise
true.
words.
Fondue for $2 says, 5-year plan, Adam. That's how we do it, comrade. Zerg for 5 Aussie bucks, and then we're going to stop because we need to move on.
I know.
Hang on, Adam. You were just spouting imperialism about cultures just chilling. I don't believe you were, so I'm not sure what you're referring to. But
Imperialism is a reality. Even though we've taken a step back from that in the modern world, doing it physically, we still do it economically. You don't think imperialism is still going on economically? It is.
mm-hmm. Sure. Okay.
Oh, thanks
Talk
for
about the
unbanning
Trump
me,
stuff.
sports.
Oh, Lord Nurse Charlie says, thanks for unbanning me. Well, there you go.
We do like periodic unbanning, so like,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Then
Thanks
all
for
then
the
all
money.
the races come back and we have to reban them.
I know.
It's kind of funny.
Right. Not that I'm Lord not to imply Lord of the Nerds is racist.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think he is,
Look,
right.
yeah, I didn't mean that at all.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the Trump thing. All right.
Mhm.
So obviously over the weekend, or I guess over Thursday, Friday, when we were off, on Thursday, it was found that Donald Trump was found guilty on all charges. All charges.
34 counts
And
of
I'm kind of
jaywalking.
of jaywalking. I'm kind of annoyed because when they were deliberating, I told Adam, I'm like, I predict guilty on all counts, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
I
And
walked
then
it
you
back.
changed your mind.
And then I was like, no, I should have changed my mind. Damn it. I had it. I had the prediction
You had
right
it.
there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I DM'd it to you, but I was like, I should just publicly be like, boom, prediction, guilty on all counts. And then I didn't. So
You should have done it.
I should
Yeah.
have. I'm
You
like,
were
oh,
scared because
called
you had
it.
to walk back that Ukraine take.
That's not why. Because at first, like, I was like, boom, guilty on all counts. And then it took a little too long. And I was like, uh-oh, maybe it's taking too long, this deliberation. So,
Well, look.
but it wasn't. They were just filling
you-
out the sheet slowly or something.
You worry about ballsy predictions because you're worried you're going to be in that Tim Pool position where, look, I look at all the
yes.
lawn signs.
All the lawn signs, 49 states vote for Trump, sweet bullshit. Right, exactly.
Ben Shapiro has been openly predicting jail time for Donald Trump, which, I mean, he makes a compelling argument that these people, I mean, they've gone as far as they have and everything looks as farcical as it does. Why not just go all the way and throw him in jail? So I think there's some validity to that point of view.
It's possible, but I'm going to say highly unlikely. I think
Well, the mainstream media says it's like impossible.
Yeah, I think it's like 90% chance no jail, 10% chance jail, or even less, maybe 95% chance no jail, 5% chance jail. Ben, so there's a very interesting conversation that we'll probably watch at some point where Ben says something that's so detached from reality that it's made me question his entire worldview.
Ben who? Burgess?
Ben Shapiro.
Oh, Ben Shapiro. Okay.
Yeah. So he has a video where it's like him, Andrew Klavan, Jeremy Boring,
yeah,
Matt Walsh, and Michael Knowles talking. And they're kind of talking about the dissident right. and like the whole monarchy thing. And it is a very interesting conversation. So maybe we'll cover it about like, is freedom a value? And it is kind of interesting. It makes me think Jeremy Boring is actually like the most moderate normie person there. It just seems like a guy. He's like, of course freedom's good. What the fuck are you guys talking about? And there's some like weird takes from Walsh and Knowles like that seem to be kind of on the side of anti-freedom, but I'm not quite sure that they're anti-freedom because the way it's being discussed is very complicated. That's part of why I'd want to watch it with you, is to kind of try to suss out what the fuck people are saying. But in that conversation, Benjamin Shapiro says that he thinks that if the Democrats and Joe Biden specifically thought they could get away with it, they would ban people going to churches and they would like ban religion. And I heard him say this and I was like, that is so detached from reality that it really, in my mind, calls into question like what the fuck he's looking at. If he thinks the Democrats would ban people going to church or ban religion. And he doesn't mean like for COVID lockdowns. He just means like period. And that the only reason they don't do it is because they can't get away with it. I'm just like, what is going on there?
He's looking at woke TikToks.
Woke TikToks is not the majority of the Democrat Party.
Right. Yeah.
That's and so, and I just bring that up because that's why, I mean, I am skeptical of Donald Trump going to jail, and I'm skeptical about Ben sort of like what he's looking at that's bringing this worldview bringing him into this worldview. So,
well, how do you feel about what's your take on the jury instructions? Because I mean, that was pretty wild.
What I assume you're talking about like that they don't have to agree on what the underlying felony is, just that the crime was done in order to cover up a felony. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't done a deep dive into what the statute says and what the interpretations of the statute is saying. I can understand both arguments that if the statute just says in reference to a crime, and if there's been other presumably rulings on this and other cases on this, and it's just showed that through case law that they don't have to agree on what the crime is because that's not actually what part of the statute is, then I guess it makes sense. But if that's not the case, and this is the first time it's ever been done, then when I would agree that would be kind of seemingly wacky and insane. So I'm not sure which one of those is true.
But it's a point of the jury is to determine the facts, and to say that they don't even have to agree on the facts, but they could still convict him.
No, but what I'm saying is like, so if the law says that all you have to do to get upcharged to this felony is that all it says is you have to change a business record in order to hide a crime, right? That's all it says. It's all the law says. And then you have other cases in the past where they've said, well, no one really even has to agree on what that crime is. They just have to say that you did something in relation to another crime. And that's what the case law has borne out through, years. Do you understand?
Yeah, I do. But it's just the whole point of the jury is to get people to agree on what the facts are. So, but you're literally saying you guys don't have to agree on what the facts are, but you can still convict.
The weird part about it, and this is what I said from the beginning when we were talking about this trial, the weird part of it is he's not actually Trump has never been convicted and is not actually being convicted of whatever the underlying crime is. He's not being charged with that. He's just being charged because it's a federal crime. So the state's not going to charge him, doesn't have the jurisdiction to charge him with that. They're saying, oh, on a state level, you're going to, you violated a state law by hiding a federal crime. And since it's not within their jurisdiction, it's not a federal crime. I guess they don't need to charge Trump for it. It doesn't really matter if they even, agree on what the federal crime is, which I agree is weird. Don't get me wrong. It is a weird thing, but I've been told in conversations with some lawyers I had about this that they said that that's not that unusual. So I just said, oh, okay, I guess that's the way it is. I don't know. Seems weird to me. I agree with you. It seems weird to me, but
look, if they're saying it's not that unusual,
right?
Obviously, I'm not an attorney, so
right.
I would defer to some attorneys' opinions. And look, you can't really get good information in this case because you've got people on the right spinning it in one direction, people on the left spinning it in the other direction.
Mhm.
I'm sure you saw Nate the lawyer did a video on it where he kind of laid it out.
I didn't actually see Nate's video on it now. What
Yeah,
did he say?
his video is really good. So he basically just goes through the case law and the
What did he say about that
peculiarities of the
aspect?
case.
Because he usually has a pretty good take on stuff.
I don't remember because
Oh, okay.
he definitely dives into like the minutia of it. Bring it up if you want to watch it. We can watch Nate's thing. Well, actually, we should watch it. We'll watch it afterwards, and I'll rewatch it, and we can talk about it tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I was more interested not in talking about the merits of the case, because again, as I said, I haven't really done a super deep dive in the merits of the case. I was more interested in the fallout of people's reaction to it.
Right, the political aspect of it.
The political aspect of it, right.
Which
right.
This is another one of those. This is why we have elections, right? Because, polling where you take a supposed representative sample of the population, 1,000 people, and actually sampling 150 million Americans is completely, that's like night and day, right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this plays out. It's funny because I watched Peter Zeihan's video on this, and Peter Zeihan just categorically thinks, okay, well, first of all, he thought Trump didn't have any chance of getting reelected anyway. But then he says now that he's convicted of a felony, he's like, all of the independents are going to go to Biden. Like, there's no way independents are going to vote for Donald Trump. So he thinks like there's 10% independents that are the kingmakers, which I agree with that. But I guess it depends upon if you think that that 10% is low information voters that just, go off of vibes, or if they're actually informed voters.
Well,
which is probably split, but go ahead.
So I think in terms of like whether it helps or hurts Trump really depends on what happens with his sentencing. I think if what happens is what like everyone but the people who are kind of pants on fire on the right screaming about the end of the world, who just say, well, he's going to get like, a fine or probation or something, minor, right? I don't think it's going to help Trump. I think it could hurt Trump. I think Zahan could be right. It would not 100% right, but I think it'd be more likely to hurt Trump than help Trump if he just gets some minor thing. Because I think there's some weird psychological thing where people go like, oh, well, he was found guilty, so he must be guilty of something, right? There's just and we're talking about normie, low information voters or swing voters who would be more likely to fall into that camp anyway. Obviously, the very politically active people aren't going to be necessarily swung one or the other by any of this stuff. But if he goes to jail, I think it's going to have the opposite effect. I think if he goes to jail, that will energize maybe not the people who are swing voters, but it would energize the right so much that a lot of people who would kind of on the fence about coming out would all come out because they would see this as such an egregious action, right? That they jailed, the presidential candidate for an action which I think most people see and I agree with seems to be like a bullshit charge against him in the first place.
Yeah. What do you perceive of just bringing the charges and convicting him as fair? Do you think he got a fair trial and this is like a fair thing to do?
Well, those are two different questions. I think. So I admit I haven't done the super deep dive on the case, but my position now is the same it was before any of this went down, which is that I think that Donald Trump did do this thing. I think he 100% did have sex with Stormy Daniels and did pay to have her, be silent, all that stuff. But I think I still think even if that is technically a violation of the law, it's bullshit. It's not something that necessarily he should be charged for anyway. It's kind of like, did Bill Clinton lie about getting a blowjob? Yes. Is that a technical breaking of the law because he lied under oath? Yes. Should he be impeached for it or charged for it? No. That's like ridiculous. Right.
So you think it's unfair that they brought him up on these charges?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I said it was
So
a
do
truth
I.
in things, because you said, is it unfair they brought up on those charges? Yes. Was the case itself unfair in terms of how it legally shook down? I don't know. I don't know enough about it to weigh in on that. I
Well,
agree with
look,
you that it's unfair that like this case should have never happened in the first place. I do agree with that.
okay, so that's my take as well. Now,
Right.
if he got the most fair trial on an unfair situation, I mean, we're kind of talking past the sale here.
Sure.
And my thinking is just how many independents are going to perceive that this was unfair? Like this does, and look, we've joked around about this, but I think this does. This is a bigger turning point in American history. I perceive it as a bigger turning point in American history than I think you do,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think it starts us down that path where you're going after former leaders on unfair charges.
Well, it's difficult. I don't necessarily disagree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's as big as what you're saying. And the reason for this is people have a tendency to forget the historic actions that have already happened. As I said, Bill Clinton is a perfect example. People forget how the Bill Clinton thing came into being. The Republicans were literally engaged in a witch hunt on Bill Clinton, where they were just trying to find something that Bill Clinton did that was illegal. They weren't looking, people forget this. When they originally started the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, they were not looking into it because they thought he got a blowjob from Monica Lewinsky. They were accusing him and Hillary of doing some kind of weird tax property scheme evasion or something. It was the whole Whitewater scandal. And then, and it was a total, the Republican Party just kind of looking for something to charge him, which is ironically what they're accusing the Democrats of doing with the Trump Russia investigation. They're like, we're gonna like go as deep as possible into Trump's background and hope to find something to charge him with. And with Trump, they didn't. And with Bill Clinton, they did that exact thing that they did against Donald Trump. And they found, oh, well, the only thing we can do is we caught him on this perjury trap because he didn't want to admit that he cheated on his wife. Right. And then that's
Right.
how you get the impeachment. And that at the time was kind of an unprecedented, insane, egregious, never before done thing that the Republican Party had definitely crossed the Rubicon of going after the president in this massively bullshit way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? Everyone kind of forgets about it. We have 8 years of Bush. We have 8 years of Obama. There wasn't really any retribution against Republicans for that until you get Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump kind of faces the same scrutiny of like, well, we're going to go into his background and try to find something to whatever we can to see what sticks. And all the Republicans go hair on fire, go, oh my God, this is so unfair. This has never happened before, even though obviously it happened against Bill Clinton, but the Republicans were the ones doing it.
Right. But I would say that there are like clear stages here that we're continuing to pass. Like if we were writing this as a screenplay and we wanted to end like America in a banana republic where, former leaders are being incarcerated by their political rivals. Okay. There are clear steps that we would go through to get to the end of that movie. Right.
Right.
And impeachment is a step on that road. It is wrongful impeachment. I mean, I would start with like maybe dirty election tricks, right? Which are kind of pushing the line, bringing up former leaders on charges is like a step on that line, right? And then them getting off, bringing up leaders on charges and then them getting convicted, right? But not serving any jail time, bringing them up on charges and getting them convicted and them doing jail time. Then there is like snatching them off the street. There's like assassinating them, right? There are all these different steps. And the you bring up with Bill Clinton is just, I mean, it's a step down the road.
It's a step, but it's a further back step. Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. So I do agree that this is like a potential step.
What's the next step?
I wonder if, and it would be fascinating to me, like, so let's like, what is it that's like kind of the triggering thing here? is it just because it's like a bullshit charge that we seem
Yes.
to like? But if it wasn't a bullshit charge, okay. So let's say it's a bullshit charge, and then Trump doesn't go to jail and gets some slap on the wrist, right? You know, so who gives a shit,
Look, if
right?
he
But wait,
murdered
hold on. Let me
somebody,
just
we
finish.
wouldn't be
Let me just
having
finish.
this conversation.
Let me just
Go
finish.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if no, I don't know if I agree with you, because let's say that this case didn't ever happen. The Stormy Daniels case never happened. Instead, we had the fake electors case going on right now. Like, it wasn't pushed back forever because of the incompetency of Georgia, and happened right now. Okay, that's a serious charge, one that I think Donald Trump is 100% guilty of doing, and is 100% should be charged with doing. And I think he should go to jail for doing that. And if that happened and he was found guilty of that and went to jail for that, I don't think you would see that much different from the right's behavior, whether the charge was bullshit or not. Because the people that are the pro-Trump people, it doesn't matter what he's charged with. They're going to say that is bullshit. And so they'd all be flipping out saying, oh my God, this is the end of democracy. This is crossing the Rubicon. I can't believe you put the former president in jail to stop the election, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, yeah, but he did something that's like really fucked up and he should go to jail for doing. So that's why I'm saying kind of like interesting, like we're perceiving it this way because we agree, you and I agree, that the charge for the Stormy Daniels thing is bullshit. But even if it was a real charge, I think half the country would still perceive it as a bullshit charge.
I agree with you on the perception thing. The difference is your scenario is not a step on the path, and the step on the path is bringing up the bullshit charges.
Well, no.
Bringing up real charges is not a step on the path to this end of the movie. It
100% can be if the Republicans perceive it as bullshit. That's all that matters.
Well, look, if they misperceive it and then start bringing people up on trumped up charges, then that is the step. I agree with you.
Well, no, you're kind of, I guess we're looking at this differently. You're sort of like looking at like steps on the path as if like there's a moral like rightness or wrongness to it. Like it's only a step on the path if the action is unjustified.
Yeah,
and I'm looking
cheating
at
or corruption. Yes,
right. And I'm looking at like, well, no, there can be steps on the path that are still morally right steps, but they still lead you down this pathway.
If they're misperceived as morally wrong.
Yeah, if they're misperceived, because all that matters is the perception, right?
Throwing an elected leader in jail who deserves to be thrown in jail, who's actually done something wrong, I would say is not a step on the path. If that is misperceived or spun in a direction that it's perceived by the political rivals as corruption, then yeah, it could become a step on the path and get you
I don't
get you
disagree.
down there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Perception is, look, and we've talked about this before, like a lot. I'm convinced now. I've seen enough that I'm convinced that a lot of these countries that fall apart, it's just these revolutionaries LARPing themselves into fucking catastrophe.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And so much of that is misperception. They're thinking, look, we're just having a fun playing around here. And the next thing you know, the psychopaths step up and there's actual blood in the streets. And then there is no going back.
Right. And it's interesting because the LARPing thing, it does annoy me with the outcome of this, because I was very curious to see what people's reaction would be on Thursday and Friday. And so I was listening to a lot of the conservative commentators' reaction. And it was interesting to me because there were a lot of people, and a lot of very pro-Trump people, that at first were kind of just like, yeah, it's bullshit, but he's not going to go to jail. He's going to get something minor. It's not going to be a big deal. And then when they started interacting or seeing other people on social media who were very Trump people with this hair on fire attitude, were riling up the energy, and people
played into it.
They play into it because people go where there is energy. Right.
Yep.
A lot of people listen to content to get energy, to get energized, to get motivated, to get energy. And so where are you going to get the energy from? Are you going to get it from the guy who's like, oh my God, we can't stand for this. We need to fight. Ah! Or the person is like, yeah, it's bullshit, but it's not really that big of a deal.
No big deal. Yeah.
Right. They're not going to go. Right. So they don't go to that. They go to the hair on fire people. And so I was watching sort of like the right wing social media basically hype itself up into this like insane level of frenzy on Thursday and Friday. It's kind of calmed down a little bit over the weekend, but kind of go this like fucking insane frenzy on Thursday and Friday about this situation when this is probably going to be fucking nothing. Like if Donald Trump went to jail for this, I'd say, okay, maybe that frenzy seems a little bit more warranted in my mind. Like if he goes to jail for this very bullshit thing, but if he doesn't, it's like it's all just this crazed attitude for, nothing essentially. And it becomes this, and that's going to become a justification. And this is kind of what bothers me. This is going to become a justification for basically doing all these bad actions
Right.
down the road. Because you say, well, because this one district in one state did one thing to Donald Trump that basically gives him carte blanche to do whatever the fuck he wants, which is a cope. Because going back to what you were saying earlier about this sort of like the steps towards badness. And I agree with you that this Stormy Daniels trial is a step towards like badness, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's fine. And I would be totally fine like having that conversation, but with someone who was a Trump fan. But the problem is like, and I said this on Twitter, and it's funny because I was having fun like triggering people on Twitter, which maybe I should have.
I saw you doing that.
It was mean, but I was just having fun like messing people. But I think if you're like a Trump fan and you're like really outraged by what happened by the verdict, I think if you want to, you can just be outraged, and I guess that's fine. That's what you want to be. But if you want to gain a little bit of insight into human nature, to understand that like that energy and anger that you were feeling about Trump getting found guilty, that's the same way. It's like this. It's like the reverse of the left's feeling about January 6th. Like they feel that level of crazy outrage. Oh my God, everything's falling apart. That's how they perceive January 6th. And then you say, well, but they're wrong and I'm right. It's like, well, are you? If it turns out that Trump doesn't go to jail and he just gets slapped on the wrist, are you right? Were you right to have that level of outrage or anger?
So the next step on the path is.
Wait, let me just finish.
And
so, and we're going to see what we're going to see now. And what's annoying is that even though so many people were predicting, and everyone seemed to be predicting that, at least before the verdict, that Trump would just get a slap on the wrist. When Trump does get a slap on the wrist and he just gets some minor thing, the people who were saying that he was going to go to jail, who were saying it's the Civil War thing, they're all going to pat themselves on the back and pat the audience on the back saying, well, it was only our anger and outrage on social media that pressured the judge into not sending him to jail. Like we saved democracy, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, go ahead. I want to make sure you finish.
Well, and I got kind of on a tangent, but I just want to say like the difficulty, I guess, with talking about some people about this, and I agree with you that this is on a step of the path of badness, is that the same people who will acknowledge that the Stormy Daniels case is on the step of the path of badness, they will ignore all the steps of the path of badness that Trump himself
they participated in. Yeah,
they participated in, right? Exactly. They'll ignore that, Donald Trump, first time ever president, tried to coerce a foreign country into opening an investigation into his primary political opponent, using his power of presidency, an unheard of insane action that I don't believe has ever fucking happened before. And yet all the people on the right just hand waved it away like it wasn't a fucking big deal, when it was a huge deal and was definitely crossing the Rubicon, going us down the path of badness, right? Same thing with, the fake elector scheme, going us down the path of badness.
Yeah, fake electors are part of the scheme, yeah.
Right. That's never happened before. And yet for some reason, if you're like more Trump side, you just kind of hand wave it away. And so there is like a level of hypocrisy to say that it's not hypocrisy, but it's just falling into the pitfall of tribalism to be able to acknowledge and perceive clearly that the Stormy Daniels case is a bullshit case that's putting us down a bad pathway, but to ignore all of the actions that were bullshit that Trump engaged himself, including the fact that he attempted to multiple times try to get Bill Barr directly to arrest Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, including, and this is what's so hilarious, it's like he literally, like a month before the election, went on TV and directed Bill Barr that he should investigate and arrest Joe Biden, his person running against him for president, that he should arrest him. And yet, because it didn't happen, and because Trump says so much crazy shit constantly, it like just kind of went over people's head. It just goes out of their minds, right?
Well, I would say talking about it is the first step. Then it happening is the next step. Like if you think of it like a screenplay, right? You'd have somebody bring up the possibility of something like that happening before you actually had it happen. So
yeah, but he didn't just talk about it. He went on TV and told him that he should do it.
No, I agree. Look, that's a step. That's a step.
Right. So
talking about it, going on, then telling people to do it and they don't do it. Like all these are the steps down the path. Yes.
Right.
Do you still think that we're not living in the crisis turning? like,
Well,
oh
I'm
my
not
God,
sure because
everything screams crisis turning to me.
I don't know because I think like all the quote, I mean, all of our crisis turning things, not all of them, but the big, the big spark for the crisis turning thing is seems to be Donald Trump, and I guess it depends if he wins. What happens during his presidency? What's he gonna do during his presidency?
Well,
Did he try
look,
to do some crazy fucking shit or not? I don't know. I don't
you
think he's
already
gonna do anything
admitted,
that crazy, but
you already admitted that Bill Clinton was on the path, and
yes,
Trump wasn't even around then.
of course.
So
Yeah, but then
we're headed
but then
down
it
this
kind of
path.
like went away. It just kind of disappeared, right?
So
It was a step, and then nothing happened, right? And then it wasn't until Trump came around that suddenly we're back on that
we're
pathway
back on
again.
the path. Okay.
Right.
So, but the next step is obviously
And wait,
flimsy
and let me just say, to be clear, I don't think that like the Democrats were holding the grudge all back since Clinton for 20 years, and that's why they did the Trump Russia investigation. Either I'm not. That's not my position, but
So the
anyway,
next step on the path is flimsy charges with jail time. Now that step
yes,
could be here in July, right? If Ben Shapiro's right and Trump does jail time, then we're already at that step. But I could easily see that step coming to fruition if Trump is in office.
right.
Right? You don't think he's going to go after people and put some fucking people in jail?
He might try to. I don't know if he'll succeed. I don't think the court system. I still have enough faith in the court system overall that won't happen.
Oh man, I've lost so much faith in the court system just over this nonsense. Yeah. But that's the next step, right? Flimsy charges with jail time for political. Okay,
that could be a next step. That could definitely be a next step. Yeah.
Random the next step after that would be incarceration without any trial
without
or
any charges. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Right. So look, we're on the same page here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I agree. The summary down trial, bad bullshit case, definitely leading us down a place that's more likely, I should say, to lead us down a bad pathway. But I still think it's ridiculous that people are like head on fire talking about crossing the Rubicon for number one. None of that might come to fruition. I don't think it is going to come to fruition. I don't think Trump's going to go to jail. Number one. Number two, those same people that were losing their shit over this now were completely justifying all the crazy shit Donald Trump was doing himself.
Right.
So to me, it's just screeches of tribalism, of like just being completely blind to your side's faults and failings, essentially.
Tribalism is what's driving all of this.
Yes.
From my perspective, I feel like I'm in an airplane that's headed for the ground, and I'm wondering how do we pull the out of this tailspin?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think pointing to tribalism and saying, oh, like, sure, we can start saying who's to blame, right? This side, that side. We're in a tit for tat struggle that continues. How does that pull us out of it?
I think the only thing that's gonna pull us, I think Donald Trump needs to either be president or go fuck or lose and just go away.
Right.
I think Donald Trump's presence causes too much TDS, both on the anti-Trump side and the pro-Trump side. It's like he has like a wave of retardation that just affects everyone, that people just cannot think clearly around him.
Right.
And then once that goes away, then you still have the problem of wokeness. And I think you'd still need, and this could be you'd either need someone on the right who's like anti-woke, but not like Trump, who's more moderate, but anti-woke, or someone on the left who actually very publicly come out against wokeness, which I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to happen.
Is it better for him to win? Is he more likely to go away if he wins or well, I think he's far more likely to go away if he wins, but what's your take?
Part of the reason I'm not voting is because I have literally no clue what would be better for the country if Trump wins or loses. I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. Overall, from like a general health perspective, that's why I'm not voting. I don't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Because obviously, yeah, if he doesn't win, I don't think it's going to be like he's going to run again in 4 years, because he could try, but
one of his kids is going to run. He's going to have some protege that's going to run in his stead. He's definitely going to be in it especially if he loses. Yeah.
He might have some kind of protege, but unless there's some new player that's never come on the scene before, no one has been able to match Trump even closely in terms of the energy that he can generate.
Right.
So I'm not sure who that protege would be unless it's a complete dark horse person that comes out of the ether.
I wonder.
None of his kids have any of that talent or ability.
Ivanka can't pull off the Trump rhetoric. I'm not
No.
sure. I don't
It's
know.
also
I've never
she's
seen
more
her.
moderate than him anyway, so I don't
Right.
even know if she'd want to necessarily do that. But
I mean, his one kid who's always doing the podcast and stuff. That guy, obviously, he's got his eye on the presidency.
yeah, he doesn't stand it. He doesn't have like an ounce of Trump's energy or charisma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he might want it. He's not going to do it. He's not going to be able to do it. So
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I like ideally. I mean, this could be like ideally. I don't know what's going to happen. Like if Trump wins and just doesn't do anything fucking crazy, I mean, that'd be a nice thing, right? Because I think that would definitely go a long ways to calming people down. But obviously, that's a big ask for Trump to win and then not do something crazy. Like if Trump won and was like, listen, it's time to bring the country together and heal the country. Like, but obviously that's not Trump. So it's like, why would we ever expect that to happen?
How do we get all the people who constantly accuse us of TDS on the record? Because like when Trump does do something insane and you talk about it, they throw TDS at you like what the. I'm like, oh my God, he just incarcerated half the United States government. They're like, oh, you got TDS.
Yes, listen, they gave him probation for Stormy Daniels, so it's okay for him to arrest an infinite number of Democrats, right? Oh yeah, like
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like,
no, I know. I mean, it's just, I don't know the answer to the question. Obviously, that would be very useful. It's a, throwing the TDS at someone, especially me, is, as I'm literally saying that the Stormy Daniels thing is bullshit and unfair, which you won't get out of 99% of anyone who, doesn't like Trump. And it doesn't matter for some people. Like some people, they'll be like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Some people won't because they're so infested with TDS themselves. But it's a thought terminating cliche. It's an NPC talking point. Because then you don't really have to actually address the points. You just say the mantra, right?
Right.
The mantra. It's like the fine people. Trump's racist. Fine people, fine people, fine people. Oh, it's okay for him to, pressure Ukraine to open an investigation and Joe Biden, TDS, right?
I mean, there is subtlety to that. I'm talking about like Trump could literally bludgeon someone to death in public, and people would be like, "Oh my God, you're so TDS."
There isn't subtlety. Everything has subtlety to it, right? This Stormy Daniels thing has subtlety to it.
Oh, a lot of subtlety.
It has lots.
That's
of
why I
subtlety
can't remember that video. He completely lays it out, but it's so complicated.
Yes, the whole. I mean, even though I think the thing is bullshit, it is very complicated legal, stuff going on there, right? It's the same thing with this is. I mean, the way it works with anything. All situations have enough subtlety or gray or wiggle room for people to construct narratives why it's okay for Donald Trump to literally lie about, to create false pieces of paper that say that he actually won the presidency to try to give the vice president the unilateral authority to declare him president, even though every single fucking person on the face of the planet obviously knows that that was never the intention of the law to give the vice president that power. And it's completely insane. And if every single person knows that if the Democrats did that, they'd all be fucking screaming bloody mercy. And all the Democrats would be defending it. Except for you and me. We'd be there like, yeah, that's super fucked up. That's insane. The Democrats shouldn't do that. They should go to jail for that.
Yeah.
But, that's what it takes to be kind of like outside of the tribal systems, to be able to see the picture a little bit more clear.
Most of our audience would be there too, obviously. So,
well, yes, I that's probably true. Well, for the Democrats doing it, yes, definitely.
Our audience doesn't really have any. The core of our audience doesn't really have any loyalty to the Democrats or the Republicans.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
I mean, we do. Obviously, we have a lot of people who want to come and argue with us, which is great. I love it. So maybe we're right. Maybe we're wrong.
Right.
So anything more on the case here? Or?
I'm sure more things will come up in super chats, but
yeah, and I mean I do think it's it's interesting. I think it's complete bullshit. I think it's bad for the country. I do think it's a step on the road to this total annihilation.
Mhm.
So I buy into what some of the Republicans are saying, or some of the conservatives are saying about this. But look, the next salvo is a politician going to jail on flimsy charges. And I am a betting man, and I would bet that it's a Democrat.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, part of
so-
it, you know, what part of it is that since it's so deeply entwined in perception, it's the hyping up of the perception of it like often leads to it in kind of like the Greek mythological way.
Of course. Look,
So-
none of the Democrats are going, "Oh, these are flimsy charges." They're all like, "Of course he should be held accountable. He did this
Right.
horrible fucking thing."
Of course.
Right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah,
all the
'cause they're just-
Republicans are going to be saying the same thing when it's a Democrat going to jail on flimsy charges.
Mhm.
They're going to be like, "Oh my God."
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Genie Payment for $5 says democracy is a marketplace, and brother, it's almost Black Friday. Me as I put down a survival bunker. There you go. I like that.
Oh, this election's going to be crazy.
M8566 for $5 says, I still think we need a Sitges Inferno for the Trump verdict. MSNBC celebrating with some great cringe. Make Adam suffer.
Oh my God. You guys are horrible.
I actually didn't watch any MSNBC or like left-wing media response to it because I knew that they'd just be like cringily celebrating it and doing headspins. I was more interested in what like the conservatives' reaction would be. So
I listened to a bunch of it, and it's just, oh my God, it's so against my moral intuitions. Like they want to see Trump go to jail. They really want to see Trump go to jail. I'm like, that would be so bad for the country.
Well, it's interesting too, because, and again, that shows to me it's yet another like clear example of why the deep state stuff isn't real. Because anyone who's thinking about the situation rationally would understand that, like, even if Trump does go to jail, he's not going to go to like that. He could still, it's not like that prevents him from running for president if he goes to jail at all. And I think if you, and even I think someone was even saying the jail term would expire before the election anyway, because it'd only be like a few months or something. And so anyone who was like rational and was like their main motivation was to prevent Donald Trump from winning would be able to obviously rationally say like putting him in jail is going to help him. That's not going to hurt him. And yet you have all these people in the media who like, you're right, because they emotionally hate Donald Trump so much. That's what consumes their thinking, is that they just want him to go to jail. That's all they care about. They're like, no, go to jail, go to jail, go to jail, right?
Yeah, it's evil. It's totally evil. They're
but it just shows you like to me
by-
that there's not like some Machiavellian, figure pulling the strings in all these people, right? They're all just sort of like most people, just kind of basing things on their intuitions and their emotions.
I completely agree with you. Nobody's driving the ship. Like the idea behind the deep state that there are some elites pulling all of the strings. All of those elites are in competition to stay elites. So I mean, obviously, the fact that they're working together, I mean, they can work together in limited alliances, but not some grand master plan where everything fits into place.
Right. Fondue for $5 says, wrong. Sitch needs to go full Tim Pool. Make an extreme prediction and just say, I don't know, it's complicated at the end. I mean, you're probably right. I should just do that. That. Or just do what most people do. You throw out the big prediction, and then when you're wrong, you just never talk about it. Pretend like it never happened.
Do you know how much World War II history have you read? I'm surprised nobody's mentioning the fact that there was this thing called the Beer Hall Putsch, where
I was thinking about that when you were talking about jailing your opponents unjustly, because I was like, well, they jailed Hitler unjustly, right? But then right. But then the perception was that it was unjust, so that's all that matters.
Well, I don't know that it wasn't unjust.
From his supporters, obviously.
They thought it was unjust, but obviously. So that they jailed Hitler, right? And they brought Hitler, before they jailed Hitler,
but you keep going.
Before they jailed Hitler, they brought him up on charges. And Hitler used the court room as kind of a bully pulpit to get his message out there. And that was hugely instrumental in the rise of the Third Reich. So he used the court to his advantage. They basically ended up incarcerating him, but he got a bunch of followers because they felt he was incarcerated unjustly. And then after he got out of jail, rose to power again. And it's just the parallels that we're seeing are, I mean, I don't like to mention them because I think Trump has somewhat been unfairly tarred as like a Hitlerian figure. And like now I'm starting to wonder if they're literally pushing Trump into the role of Hitler. And now there's going to be mass catastrophe just because everyone's losing their fucking minds. Yeah. There is no deep state. Nobody's driving the ship. No, we're all just adrift at sea watching this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
RBGH fan for $5 says, per Harmeet Dillon, quote, "This is the first time in New York State history that falsification of records has been charged as a felony." Yeah, I do know that. That's true. Right. But what I was talking about is this the first time that there's been a situation where there hasn't had to be an agreement on what the underlying crime was, right? Because if that's the case, that would be a further indication that the jury instructions or that the judge's interpretation of the law were bullshit, if that's the case. So I'm curious because I'm assuming Nate will talk about that in his video. He usually has a pretty good non-biased grasp on these sorts of things.
We're just going to do super chats and then sign off. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do.
Yeah, we're not going to get to the second story today. But Drew the Dogman for $2 says, as soon as they could ban church, they did. So this is kind of the thing that's like annoying too about the lockdowns. Because if you remember when the lockdowns happened, there was all these people on the internet, on social media who were like, oh my God, this is the deep state. They're just using this to prepare us for the takeover. They're never going to end the lockdowns. It's all lockdowns, blah, blah, blah. Like they were fucking foaming at the mouth, right? And what happened? Mm-hmm. All those people, 100% of them were all 100% wrong, right? They were all wrong, right? Obviously, they were all wrong. And first of all, the concept was retarded anyway because all the lockdowns were done on state by state levels anyway. So, unless all the states are working in conjunction with the federal government, and obviously a lot of states were run by Republicans, so that wouldn't fucking happen, or they wouldn't be doing that, even though I guess Trump was the president at the time anyway. So Trump was the one, from the federal government perspective that was in charge of the lockdowns, which for some reason doesn't get talked about or gets ignored. So unless Donald Trump's the one who wants to lock down the churches. But so that concept doesn't even make sense. And then obviously, as soon as, the COVID went away, all the lockdowns went away, as one would expect. And so, but then the people, they won't say, oh, well, I guess I was wrong about my prediction about the deep state and preparing us for all these things. They'll say, no. It was our fighting back that showed them that we wouldn't take it. So they had to get rid of the lockdowns, right? Which is bullshit, which is 100% bullshit. It's just, there are people who, they thought they were doing what was right. They were wrong, I think. Obviously, COVID didn't turn out to be the mass, panic thing that people kind of panicked over. And then when it was gone, the lockdowns went away.
You really do yourself a lot of damage to when you dip into this conspiratorial, like the enemy is out to get me, someone is sleeping under my bed looking to sabotage my life attitude. Like a lot of times people are just dumb or doing their own thing. Like Hanlon's razor, the idea that it's stupidity and not malice will do you a lot of good in just maintaining your sanity across time.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But people don't want to be sane because being sane is boring. So it's not necessarily energizing either.
Well, look, you can pretend to be insane and have a bunch of fun and just get a good night's sleep and,
sure,
live and have fun.
A Libertarian Task Watch for $5 says, I can't stand Trump, but jailing a political candidate 6 months before the election gives banana Republic vibes and really sets up a scary precedent. Yeah,
it does.
I agree completely. I don't disagree with that. Yeah,
I'm fucking terrified, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm not, because as I said, I just think there's such a low chance that Donald Trump's going to go to jail for this. This seems so minuscule. So,
oh my God! But then the next step, I guess. Look,
I understand you're saying the next step, but I'm talking about just
when the next the next step happens. Will then you come out and say, "Oh, Adam, you were right. You think the next
No,
step
no, no,
is
no, wait, hold on, pause. I don't disagree with you that this could be a step towards Donald Trump trying to put someone in jail.
right? Okay.
That could very well be. Well, let's be real. Even if this didn't happen, there's a high chance that Donald Trump would try to put someone in jail, Democrats in jail, regardless of this, right? Now, what will happen is because of this, it will give the Trump supporters more moral righteousness in their own minds to justify whatever Donald Trump was doing, even though if this case didn't happen and Donald Trump won the election and tried to put Joe Biden or someone in jail, they would all support it anyway. This has zero impact on anything. It just all it does is change the argument that will be levied once it happens.
All that is kind of immaterial to my argument. Like, I'm asking you, like, I keep saying, look,
No, it's not, because I'm
step.
saying I agree with
Oh
you
my
that on one
God.
hand, it's a step. On the other hand, I don't know if it is a step, because I think Donald Trump would try to do the action that you're saying is a step towards there anyway.
All I'm saying is, like, when are you actually going to acknowledge that we are on that road? Like, at what step are you going to say, okay, we are definitely
No,
on that
we
road?
are more on the road than we're not.
Okay. But at what step are you going to be? What step are you going to be like, this is some fucked up shit? Like, at what step are you going to say,
I said
like,
this was, I mean, I said this is some fucked up
catastrophe is imminent?
Well,
What
okay,
step?
I don't know what step I'll say catastrophe is imminent, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. I said this was some fucked up shit way back when Donald Trump was using his power of the presidency to try to get Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. And for some reason, I was called TDS for this unprecedented behavior that a president would ever engage in, because
Right.
some people want to, cope about it. But so,
Right. Yeah.
so,
Well,
but
look,
in terms of,
if
I think the country is relatively solid. So I think it takes a lot for us to get to the catastrophe position.
right, exactly. But the question is, at what step? Like,
I don't
the
know the answer to that
hypothetical
question,
step.
right? I don't know. You have to keep testing when we get there, see what it's like.
What if
So-
Biden is assassinated?
By who? If this is some random person, I don't think that would be like, I don't think that would, why would that destabilize the country? Just some crazy person do it? I mean, there could be response to that, could be some kind of draconian lashback at the right that could be like a very damaging thing if that happened.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I have to play it by ear. I don't want to, I can't, I don't have a
What if
crystal
Trump?
ball.
What if Trump goes to jail?
That's definitely putting us again more on the pathway of what you're talking about. Yeah.
But you're still not gonna. I'm
No,
just
just have to
asking
see
for
what
any
happens.
step.
I'll have to see what happens. If Donald
about-
Trump goes
how
to
about
jail
they-
and then there's like mass riots in the streets, Republicans are like burning down then I'm like, okay, well maybe we're maybe we're there, right?
How about the Republicans suspend Congress?
Yeah, that would be that. The president. I don't know what I don't know what you mean by
I'm
that.
just asking. Look,
Yes.
you can name anything.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Republicans
that would be Republicans suspending
Congress.
Congress or something crazy like that. Yes, sure. I'll agree with that.
Somehow I think, like, if the Republicans suspended Congress, you'd still be like, it's just temporary. Like, it's going to be no problem.
No, that'd be pretty. If the Democrats or Republicans suspend Congress, that'd be pretty.
Okay.
Like, oh, we're there, right? So
Yeah. You'd be like, now we're fucked.
right. Libertarian Sasquatch for Joe says removing from office and jail are different. Obviously,
But
sure.
yeah, removing from office on flimsy. The whole idea is the whole corruption thing. Like, there are a certain set of rules that are considered fair play, and people start, using means that are not fair play. Obvious, not fair play.
Wait, hold on. I think you're confused. What the context was, Libertarian Sasquatch, of me bringing that up. Obviously, removing the president from office and going to jail are different things. I was talking about the context that Adam was talking about in terms of like the pathway leading us towards the bad thing. And I was saying that was a past step that happened that was leading us towards the bad thing that like people ignore because it happened long ago, or they've kind of just for whatever reason accepted it as like a normal thing when it really wasn't a normal thing.
Right.
So I understand that they're different actions. I'm just saying that was a path. Though if they had been successful and impeached Clinton, there isn't a guarantee they wouldn't have also prosecuted charges against him, because he did lie under oath, right? So,
right.
The real Haltonator for $2 says, Adam, define racism, not a troll.
Discriminating against people based solely on their race.
Right. Brian for $10 says, Brian for $20, thank you. Says, if you guys are going to do a deep dive on this Trump case, then I'd suggest comparing Trump's case to Hillary Clinton's actions to cover up the payment of the Steele dossier. Their actions were identical. The only difference is Trump used his personal funds, where Hillary and the DNC used campaign funds and then hid the payment trail. Really? That's interesting. I don't know much about the payment of the Steele dossier, so that's definitely a good point if it was basically an identical payment operation, and they didn't get in trouble for that, so. Zerg says, we now have evidence that the system is biased. Well, you have evidence that the system in New York, in terms of the prosecutor's office, is obviously biased. Obviously, this is a problem with, like, when you say things like that, and when people say things like that, they say the system is biased. When you say the system is biased, it shows that you have a fundamental misunderstanding of how federalism in the United States works. There's not a magical one system. We are composed of 50 states, and those 50 states have even more broken down systems by county, district, blah, 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 blah. And all those systems all have their individual biases. You can go to a random district in Texas, and it could be the most right-wing biased fucking place to ever have, a court case in the fucking country. And in fact, when you look at court cases and you talk to lawyers, that's generally how a lot of these, especially the big political cases, go down. Someone tries to pick a district, a jurisdiction where they know that whatever they want is going to be more aligned with the ideology of the judges and the participants in that district. So now we hope that overall, even though all these individual districts have biases, that together the average that comes out of them is going to be something that looks relatively fair. So. TL152 for $5 says, I'm with Adam here. What's to stop Texas from going after Biden for some obscure border law? This is a slippery slope of going after political opponents. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree at all.
Yeah, look, and
I don't disagree with that at all.
Just I want to say, just like you and I disagreed on the Ukraine impeachment. And I think what Trump did with the Ukraine situation was wrong. But this is why I think going after someone like that, just there's such a danger of it being misperceived by the other side and getting on this path in the first place. I think sometimes you got to let shit slide.
No, I agree with you, but I guess what my point is, and what annoys me when the Trump supporters look at this, is that they're looking at themselves as if Trump and themselves are like the innocent lamb being attacked by Democrats, when you're right. It's Donald Trump doing what he did in the first impeachment. Donald Trump trying to get Bill Barr to go after Biden a month before the election. Donald Trump trying to get the election overturned via the fake electors thing. Those things put Democrats on the pathway. Their perception of those events put Democrats on the pathway to do the Stormy Daniels trial.
Yeah, I agree.
And then you could say, well, then Democrats doing the Stormy Daniels trial could put Republicans on the pathway to do something far worse, right? And so you have this continual, like, each side hyping themselves up and ignoring how their actions made the other side basically go crazy or get to the position that they're in the first place.
Yeah, this is why I don't think the blame game will not stop this. Even though the blame game is like all anyone ever wants to play, which sucks. Yeah.
That's why I think when you're going to do some action like bring charges, it's got to be for something not bullshit. So even if you have the action where the perception is going to be crazy, it's like, yeah, but what I'm doing is right.
Well, but it's got to be.
So that's why the Stormy Daniels case was a bad case, because it was a bullshit thing to bring up in the first place. I'm
saying it's got to be something that's completely unforgivable. Like, it's got to be something just earth shattering.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, even if it's like something like the fake electors thing, which I think is unforgivable, most of the Trump supporters are not going to. It doesn't matter what it is, as you were saying. Trump could bludgeon someone to death, and there'd be some justification for it.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Even if it matches, what I'm saying is, even if it matches your moral weight of unforgivability, it's not going to matter to the perception of like 90% of Trump supporters.
Yeah.
So. Lurchain Sasquatch for $5 says, such a difference is if the charges are real, sure, the right will cry, but it's irrelevant. But trumped up charges is nakedly political. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I agree with that. I guess what I meant wasn't, will it be different in terms of like the perception? Like the Trump supporters' perception of it will be the same. or not. I don't know if the charges being real or not. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe if the charges are fake, that like swings enough of the moderate people, the moderate Trump supporters, or like the moderate people in the middle, maybe that swings them enough in one direction in terms of like the outcome being bad, versus if it's not trumped up charges, no pun intended, and it's something like real, then there'll be like enough moderate people in the middle, enough moderate Trump supporters that are like won't buy into the civil war fury. It's possible. I'm kind of skeptical though, but that's, I guess, feasible. But unless, obviously, I'm not talking about in terms of like the moral ethics of bringing up the charges in the first place. I'm just talking, we were talking about like sort of the outcome of the road to the bad outcome of the dissolution of America or something, or the Tim Pool Civil War.
TM.
RBGH fan for $5 says, you all should watch the video regarding the Trump felony conviction. It's pretty wild. Biden smiles awkwardly while dodging questions about Trump. Okay, I'll check it out. Seems weird. Is it like Biden like basically acting bizarre and crazy?
Can't wait for those debates. We're gonna have some fun reviewing those, aren't we?
Zurich for $5 says, in Sitch, I was watching the left wing saying lock him up. They are now, yeah. They are now, definitely. Which again, you could blame, you could say, well,
yeah,
you know,
Trump
why are they
started
saying,
the chant.
Why are they saying lock him up? Because Trump was the one saying lock Hillary up. So again, it's exactly what you were saying, Adam, where it's like one side creates a perception of something, which then the other side uses as a justification to push the line a little further, right? And then that causes the other side to say, oh, they pushed the line, so now we get to push the line. And then they get to push the line, and then they get to push the line, and then they get to push the line. And then it's kind of like, that's why I think you're correct, Adam, when you need to have like someone say, okay, it ends here, right? The cycle ends here. So
this all ends with Russia invading all of Europe and us being stuck fucking fighting with each other.
There you go.
It does. I'm telling. Oh, okay.
Right.
Whatever. Gonna be a big fucking I told you so.
Fondue Fried Eye says, I'm calling my next workout playlist conservative doom. There you go. Doggy Dog for $5 says, just clarification, was Trump's campaign not investigated for the first time he ran, or was that a rumor? No, his campaign was investigated.
Yeah,
it was investigated, and it was even investigated. It was investigated. Started because George Papadopoulos knew about the Hillary email stolen by Russia before the public did, and then, which I think was justified to investigate that. But then it became unjustified when it turned out that the FBI was using improper bullshit. I don't know what you'd call it, an improper bullshit procedure, I guess, in order to keep re-upping surveillance on not Trump, but on George Papadopoulos and what was that guy's name? The guy that Russia tried to make a spy, and then they decided he didn't know anything useful, and then years later he got part of the Trump campaign.
I wasn't paying attention.
Whatever, don't worry about it. But anyway, and then the FBI was basically doing a bunch of bullshit to re-up surveillance on those two individuals. So, but no, yeah, it was definitely being investigated. Ashley for $5 says, Sitch's bias on full display, kind of going as I thought it would. Well, I'm not sure. Like, it's weird. People, I guess they're just like,
that's not fair.
I guess they're just like emotionally upset because you tell me like some argument, like that information, Ashley, it tells me literally nothing of value.
Yeah, what is
he? I don't even know what's the point. Like, how am I supposed, there's nothing for me to interact with. There's nothing for me to interact with there. I don't know. What is your argument? Like, if you have some argument, you could, either write it somewhere and I could look at it. You can come on their show and argue with me for it. But just saying that doesn't tell me anything useful. So.
Oh yeah, we were gonna invite Twitter Sucks on, weren't we?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we ran out of time for that. Sorry, Twitter Sucks, but
we can do it tomorrow though.
We can do it tomorrow.
Is tomorrow cool?
So.
I love arguing with Twitter Sucks about economics. People love it.
Zurich for $5 says, Trump causes the left not to control themselves, victim blaming. I mean, it happens. I thought you could say it's victim blaming, but Trump causes everyone to lose control, unfortunately. Both the left and the right. Everyone, for some reason, he has like a mental cognitive field that like lowers everyone's IQ, 20 points. So.
Mm-hmm.
2024, A Gay Odyssey. That's pretty funny. It says illegal is literally replacing Chicago folks. MAGA 24. Okay. Sure, I guess. Let's see. 2024 for $2 says Sitch, if January Sixers aren't free, you are not free. There you go. There you go. I like it. The Real Hulk for $5 says, I agree with what you're saying about Trump, but Trump could go full woke and the left would never give him the slightest credit. I also agree with that. That is true. That is true. The people are too, the left is too dug into the narrative of Trump. So like Trump could literally be struck by God tomorrow and change his ways and, you know, see the light and be like a completely moral person. And too many people on the left are too dug in, and their reputation in their way in which they make money is too built around attacking Trump that they couldn't change essentially their opinion on that. So
yeah, he's too big a villain for them. They make too much money off him.
Right. And their audiences wouldn't accept it too. Because I'm firmly in the belief that people's audiences radicalize the creators, not the other way around.
Yeah, me too.
Zerg for another 10 Aussie bucks says, Sitch, you just victim blame Trump because you have TDS. If it's the fault of the people of G6 for doing what they did, then it's the fault of the lefties raging when he wins. I'm not sure what the thought process. You have to kind of have a more cogent thought there than I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but
he's saying Trump is the victim by what the lefties are doing to him. So, well, look, and I understand a lot of people have this attitude.
No, wait, hold on. This is, if that's your take, you're in way too emotional defensive mode, because I was not assigning moral ascriptions of blame in anywhere, saying that someone is justified by any action. That was, if you heard me making a moral justification, say, well, it's okay for something bad to happen to Trump because the Republicans or Trump did something bad to happen to someone else, you are completely in a weird, like, you're too emotional about what we're talking about. I never said anything about that. We weren't even having a conversation about that. Me and Adam were having a very specific conversation about a non-moral, pragmatic, literal steps that lead the country down a bad pathway. We're just talking about step A to B to C to D. There's nothing about moral prescriptions going on in that conversation, or whether an action was right or not. And so when I was saying like, oh, Trump's actions are making the Democrats crazy, or the Democrats' actions are making Republicans crazy, because it's the same thing. People are saying, oh, the Democrats' actions of putting Trump in jail will therefore justify the Republicans to do something else, right? None of these things are about whether it's right or wrong, whether the Democrats or Republicans have, the responsibility for their actions. We're just saying this is like a reasonable expectation of what will happen because the previous events happened before it.
Yep.
Okay. Toxic Mix for $50 says, this idea that Trump is going to overturn everything and arrest everyone was insane. Far more likely he'll obstruct at every turn and the right will be demoralized. Only problem is the Dems have made it impossible to concede now.
I hope you are right, Toxic Mix. Oh God, I hope you're right.
I think, obviously he can't arrest everyone. I think if Trump wins is a big chance he'll try to arrest Biden. I don't think he'll be successful because they have to find something to arrest him for. So I think you'll have I think Trump's second presidency will be basically consumed with just like really weird trying to go after Democrats and just not succeeding because there isn't really much to go after. So and I guess it also depends too. He's going to have to find an attorney general who's like a big stooge, essentially. He'll do whatever he says, because that was Trump's big problem in his first term, is that he kept getting attorney generals who had levels of integrity and backbone that he wasn't willing, that wouldn't just do whatever Trump would say. Right. Yeah.
He's going to solve that next time around, man.
Maybe.
He's going to elect a Jello bowl.
We'll see.
As fucking attorney general.
Right.
Look, I hope you're right, Toxic Mix, and obviously $50 is a very generous super chat.
And thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks.
But yeah, I hope you're right. It's good. Listen, that could 100%, all the people hair on fire about Trump going to jail, civil war. It could be the same thing with, Trump wins and then nothing really happens, right? Could definitely happen. Who knows?
We'll see.
I'm skeptical though. But. Pondering Politics. Hey, thanks so much. Look at that. Pondering Politics for $20. Says Trump's efforts to prosecute Biden, Obama, and Clinton were stymied by Barr and Sessions. He says he will put new people in place who will comply with his orders in his second administration. I get, yeah, that's what we just said. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, look at that.
Right. Yeah. I think he's going to try to do that. I guess the question is, will he accomplish it? Because obviously, when he put Barr in place, he perceived Barr as basically being 100% on board, and Barr kind of signaled that. And then still there was a line in which Barr was not willing to cross that, Barr found himself, right? And it was with the elector stuff. So
I don't know. Like the Republicans need to win the Senate for him to do Senate confirmations that are just like
ridiculous,
rubber stamp, right?
Well, that's a good point. And there could be, I don't know what states are coming up for the next election. So I don't know what the predictions are for the Senate.
Right.
I thought I vaguely remember them saying that they're kind of thinking was going to be swing toward Republicans. So
yeah, look, if he has both houses, oh my God, we're so fucked.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. We live in interesting times, at least. So
yeah, this is called the crisis turning.
Right. Thank you, Joe Angel Miramontes for 17 months says, I'm behind the stream. Brianna Joy Gray should be called Filibuster Barbie. I like it.
That's good. Yeah.
Good one.
And then you won't get accused of being a racist either.
Yeah. Twitter Sucks for $2 says, tomorrow then, humph. Sorry about that, Twitter Sucks. We spent a lot of time in the beginning talking about culture. So
look, we should just let him come on in the beginning tomorrow. So
yeah, you can just come on in the beginning so we don't have the same problem, I guess.
Yeah.
That's true. So
We'll do like some opening story and then we'll just let him come on. So
Neotsu for $2 says Deep State has always been a standalone complex. I don't agree with that, because part of the way our system is structured is that there's all these actors that have contrasting goals with each other. And COVID lockdown and things of that nature are examples of that, because you have Republican managed states, you have Democrat managed states, and they kind of are set up in a way that they want to make each other look bad. So they're not really acting with any sort of, unison, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So I don't think that's accurate. Beyond the fact, unless when you say deep state, if all you mean is just like overall people in the government are going to continue to perpetuate ideas that perpetuate the country's continued existence, then I agree with that. But we kind of want that from our government. So. The Real Hall for $2 says woke BS is how we got Trump. I think that's definitely a contributing factor. But I think another big factor is just that after the housing crash, people want to hope and change. We had Obama. Obama didn't really bring hope and change. And so that energy remained unfulfilled. And so that's how kind of Trump was able to grab that change, the hope and change energy, but just kind of put it through a right-wing lens instead of the left-wing lens that Obama had it. The Butter Apple for $10 says, I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes yesterday, and its themes are genuinely extremely applicable to this conversation. Well-meaning people mixed with bad actors can escalate conflict. True and interesting. I haven't seen any of the new Planet of the Apes movies, but
supposedly it's one of the few movies that like made money.
Really?
So yeah, look, if it's got complicated themes, maybe I'll go see it. Sounds interesting.
Okay.
Fondue, keep going. Trudge through. What are you doing?
I got lost because it did the scroll thing.
Oh, it did?
Fondue for $5 says, how long until American politics gets people bringing up stuff that happened 75 years ago? Oh.
Well, they are already. What? The 1619 project.
We're talking about like the Israel thing.
Oh, I know, but obviously the 1619 project is like 200 years ago and we're still talking about it, so.
Toxic Mix for $10 says the problem is even if Trump set the Democrats on this path, the response hasn't just been localized to him, but most of his supporters in various ways, so it's difficult to not feel jointly attacked. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's definitely a fair point. And also kind of feeds into itself because there are definitely legitimately Democrats attacking like just Trump supporters and, expanding the net. And at the same token, there are people on the right who are perpetuating the idea that like any attack on Trump is attack on all of us, even when it's not. So, but it definitely does happen. So that is a fair point.
Biden did this in some influential speeches, but then he kind of backed off a bit. So I was hoping that that strategy, that electoral strategy, was not bearing fruit for him. So,
Lord Nurse for $5 says you just painted Trump supporters as unthinking savages that would support him murdering people with his bare hands. I'm shocked people say you have TDS. Well, if you're actually listening, it wasn't a question of saying unthinking savages. It's a question that any events that happen have a level of nuance and gray area that people will always justify the actions. And if you don't think that that's true with Donald Trump, then I'm afraid you just don't understand human nature, right? The same token would be true that if Joe Biden, murdered someone with his bare hands, a lot of people would rush to defend Joe Biden for that action, right? I mean, that's literally where the Sam Harris, when he said, like, I don't care if Hunter Biden, would he say, if I don't care if Joe Biden has like people in his basement or something, he's still better than Donald Trump? Like, that's where that line comes from. So,
yeah, and I was only talking about the specific super Trump loyalists who are constantly accusing us of TDS, not fucking all Trump supporters.
I think
that's
the problem,
insane.
Lord of the Nerds has a thing that he confuses for knowledge production that isn't actually knowledge production, where he takes something that one of us says, and then he hyperbolizes it, and he removes all of the context from it, and he puts it out of context and says, aha, you said this one thing, you're crazy, right? And that's always been like, and a lot of people do that. This is like a very constant way in which people do like gotcha attempts or dunks on the internet. So I would say, like, if you want to actually like be able to have a more coherent or productive way of looking at the information, Lord of the Nerds, you should probably like stop yourself from engaging that behavior, because it seems like that's your natural way of trying to engage in the conversation.
Yeah, you're saying we're painting all Trump supporters that way, but you're crazy if you don't think some people are going to support whatever Trump does. Like, someone is not going to step up and accuse people of TDS who are saying, oh, he probably shouldn't have murdered that guy. Right. Like, if you think no one is going to do that, you're the crazy one.
Sketch for $5 says, what Sitch is currently experiencing is just another day on stream for Dev on the weekly set. Oh, really? I should probably watch that more, see what's going on.
Is everyone attacking him? Is that what's going on?
I'm not really looking at the chat,
this is great. Keep the attacks coming. We're getting rich over here, guys. Come on, keep them coming.
Rep Mike Oxlong for $10 says, staying in power has been a PR game for a long time and has nothing to do with the severity of your actions, or free to Watergate being such a looming event in the century of disgusting events.
Yeah. Look, but like the cycle resets. I would have to look at the Watergate situation. So I think there's like a 80 to 100 year cycle, and we're at the end of that cycle now.
Well, if you if you're talking about, I don't really buy it.
So these other cycles might have been. Look, the plane crashes once every 80 to 100 years. So I'm just saying we're at the plane crash moment now.
Right.
And part of the fun is I'm convinced it's going to happen, and Sitch is just completely against it. So it's kind of like a running storyline on the show. I'm like, okay, well, when is Sitch finally going to come to the realization that we are crashing?
Not today, Satan. Libertarian Sasquatch for $5 says, no, Sitch, removing someone from office is a, quote, normal thing because it's constitutional. Jailing your political enemies is not. Well, that depends. Jailing your political enemies is not constitutional if it's done in a non-constitutional legal way.
Of course, and that's what we're talking about.
Right, which is what we're talking about. So,
Ostracies back again.
Ostracy for $10 says, Sitch, last time you said that I sent you 2 pages in your DMs. The point is mostly just say I disagree with you. I can't articulate arguments, super chats. I mean, that's fair, I guess.
True.
Did I not respond to? I thought I responded to your DMs. I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. So, Zurich for $2 says, lock Bush up. There you go. Lock Bush up. Mr. Ubercross, thanks so much for $20. Says, based on the cursory review of New York law, Trump should get 4 years of probation. Everything is an E-class felony, no priors. The guidelines, which don't have to be followed, are probation. The worst he could get is 120-ish years. Is it like, really?
Is that a probation or actual jail?
What do you mean 120-ish years?
And look, thanks for letting us know that, so we can at least have some sort of baseline. Everyone in the media is kind of saying, oh, he's just going to get house arrest or probation or some slap on the wrist charge. But I mean, Ben Shapiro's argument is they went this far. I mean, why not just go all the way? That's what they're.
What would be the incentive to do that?
To go all the way? What
To
was
put
their
him in
incentive
jail.
to go this far?
Because they think that if he's convicted of a felon, it will hurt his reputation enough to help him
And
lose the
going to
election.
jail won't make his reputation worse and keep him out of office?
I don't think so. I think it would have
all
the
of
reverse
this.
effect.
Well, okay. I mean, obviously you can argue over that, but
Right.
a lot of people are arguing that just convicting him has had the reverse effect.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are just, they're in their own echo chamber.
I mean,
and
it's
they're
true.
like,
We
what
don't.
do you
None of
mean?
us
This
know.
is going great.
None
If
of
we
us
can incarcerate
right.
him, we're all going to win the election. Biden's going to be
No,
the
I
most
mean,
beloved president of
right.
all time.
That's true. That's fair. I mean, we're all making gut intuition predictions here about what the future will hold in terms of, the charges help, do they hurt, guilty help or hurt, is him going to jail help or hurt, and we won't really know until the election actually shakes out, obviously. So, Fondue for $5 says, you got me thinking, is Trump's TDS aura a passive ability or activated? Either way, it's great for a tank build. You're correct, but it is passive. It is a passive, always on ability. So, though he has abilities to like have the TDS aura spike in power. So, he's like a paladin. Donald Trump is like a paladin. He has all these auras activated, and then his abilities kind of make the auras, spike in power for brief time periods. Twitter sucks for $2 says, tomorrow works. DM me on Twitter with a 1 hour heads up.
Well, we stream at the same time every day, so it's 11.
We stream at 2 Eastern, so.
Yeah, 11 a.m. Pacific, so.
Right.
There you go. Look, I'm officially giving you your heads up right now. We're streaming at 11.
There you go.
Yeah.
MetaWorks 41190 for 26 months says, I hate YouTube's mindless censorship. It's so weird and random what it censors. So
I commented from the Sitch and Adam account on a replied to someone's comment, and it fucking deleted my comment.
really?
Like,
That's insane.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? For
That's
real?
so funny. Right. That's so funny. Zurich for 2 Aussie bucks says Trump could cure COVID and the Democrats wouldn't. I mean, I assume you mean wouldn't take it, but you're 100% correct. And actually, it's funny because you say that because we actually talked about this. If you remember when Trump was president, and he was talking about like, we're going to light speed the vaccine, have the greatest vaccine ever. It's going to cure COVID. When he was saying that, there was so many people left saying, I'm not going to take that vaccine. I don't trust that vaccine, right? There were so many people left saying that they didn't trust the vaccine when Trump was president. And then boom, Trump's out of the office before the vaccine's ready. Biden's the president. Vaccine comes out. All those feelings fucking disappear. All the Democrats are like, give me the jab, give me the jab, give me the jab, brah. And then all the Republicans are like, I don't trust that shit. It's going to give me a heart problem. That's so true. It's so fucking true. Pondering politics for
read Mr. Ubercross's recent chat. I think he's updating his super chat here. Mr.
Sorry, jail
Ubercross.
time is 1 to 4 years per felony. If they stack them, then it's 120-ish years. However, the guidelines are only 4 years of probation total. Oh, even if they're not consecutive.
Right.
I got you. They're not consecutive things. I got you. Okay, that makes more sense. Pondering politics for $10. Thank you. Says if the Senate won't confirm, he can make his cabinet appointees acting. Oh, well, there you go.
So Pondering is saying he can get that.
He can get around
spineless fucking rubber stamper in the DOJ, no matter what.
Somehow, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Stug for $2 says, quote, Trump is like a paladin. Known Trump fan Sitch. There you go. True. The real Holtonator for $2 says, quote, Trump is a paladin. Sitch 2024. There you go. Run with it. Trump is officially a paladin, everyone. Saul for $2 says, to be fair, they said they would take it if Fauci okayed it. Some people did. But I remember lots of people on the left that were like, I think I'm going to let other people take the vaccine before. They were like, there's a level of skepticism they had for it just because Trump was president, even though Trump obviously had nothing to do with the production of the vaccine. So, F-Bomb for $5 says, hey guys, how's the comic coming along?
Great. I just got it back from the proofreader. I just updated all the proofs. I'm looking at printers right now, so there you
go. Very soon. Yeah, look at that.
So I pasted the link to the campaign in the chat if you guys want it back. You're running out of time.
Twitter Stocks for $5 says, no, silly. Does that mean you're starting at 2 p.m. or am I joining early? Or did you mean you're starting at 2 p.m. regardless? No, we're starting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern regardless. And if you're around, you can come on right as we start at 2 p.m. That's what we mean. Is that clear? So, Halton Air for $2 says, if the right wins, they will turn our cities full of traitor lefties in a charnel house. If the left wins the policies, the police will be abolished and I could take vengeance personally. If the center wins, I get a good life. I win either way. There you go. Is that what it censored you from saying? But there you go. Anyways.
All right. That was great.
That was
See
good.
you guys tomorrow.
See you guys tomorrow.
Bye.